This is The Gorge, the podcast where my friend Sarah and my friend Sara and my friend Oates gorge ourselves on overanalyzing a topic.
The Gorge is brought to you by Patreon. That's patreon.com/thegorge, where for just $5 a month you gain access not one but two whole podcasts one day. I'll remember how to do this intro. $5 gets you Takeout, a monthly commentary track where Ben and I feel like we don't talk.
We feel like we don't talk enough.
That's correct. I feel like I don't talk enough.
It's an auspicious start to this episode.
This is how this whole episode is going to go. Anyways, Takeout is a monthly commentary track where Ben and I decide we don't feel like talking over something.
No, we do feel like talking over something.
I give up. Hey, just go to patreon.com/gorge and see our fucking podcast options there.
Yeah,
fuck you.
So if you go to the Gorge Patreon, you can get all sorts of bonus shows and also funky little roles on the Discord server that we're in.
Yeah.
Give you a little icon of a hamburger next to your name.
You're welcome.
Come join our Discord. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, as you have seen by the title and the intro and all that, we are talking about Metal Gear Solid. All of it. We've got everyone here. You've got me, Ryben. You've got Sarah Borg Ninja.
You could have gone with Sarah Medic and you didn't.
Well, Sarah Medic. That's appropriate considering the nurse, right?
That's right.
We've got Otsukon.
That's perfect.
And we've got the Sega Saturn game system that you can play Metal Gear on.
Editor's note: you cannot play Metal Gear on a Sega Saturn.
But you can play Police Knots.
Oh, that's true.
Which is Metal Gear Zero.
I'm leaving the podcast.
No,
Sorry,
you're not.
That was too much.
No, you're not.
Bye.
Otsukon and Sarah Medic.
No!
Yeah. So for our sanity, and also because we don't want to sit here for 8 hours unbroken, we're splitting this into two, which I have tentatively referred to as the Gorge Deja Vu and the Gorge Jamais Vu.
Yes, that's correct. That's what the episode is going to be titled.
We are going to split this in a very unconventional way, which is that we are going to split this along the lines of Solid Snake, well, actually, Snake in general, let's say, and Raiden. So, in this episode, which, is it safe to assume we're starting a Snake episode?
Yeah. We're doing Snake, and then we're doing Metal Gear Solid 1, 3, and a good chunk of 4.
Right.
And then next time we're doing 2, 4 again, the Revengeance of 4, and then also Revengeance.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do we
structure this?
I don't know. We can try a structure. We know it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
Well,
So, Ben, I suppose let's start off with you're the new guy here.
Yes.
So tell me about how you felt about Metal Gear Solid 1, and we'll kind of kick off from there. Metal Gear Solid 1 vis-a-vis Solid Snake.
Yes. Metal Gear Solid 1, I've said this a lot during the actual stream, but if you didn't watch those streams, go watch those streams. They're all on YouTube now. Metal Gear Solid 1 is Devil May Cry 1, in that it is a fine game on its own, but if you play any of the other games, it's going to be really hard to go back to 1.
That's correct.
That makes
Metal
sense.
Gear Solid 1 is a very classic PS1 game. A console notable for not having a standard second stick on it.
Yeah, not having an analog stick playing that game was unconventional. Not being able to walk at all. You can only run.
Right.
But it was still a very interesting game.
Sure.
Because it was a sequel to 2 games that came out on the NES, they kind of expected you wouldn't know these characters all that well, and so even though it does actually go into depth a lot about the events of Metal Gear 1 and 2, it does a good job of filling you in on what's important
Right.
about them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It plays unlike what I expected it to play like. But once I got the hang of it, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, in terms of, since this is about Solid Snake.
About Snake, yeah. So,
Right.
About Snake, this is probably the only... This is the only time, I think, besides Metal Gear 1 and 2, where you get, like, an actual, like, idea of who Snake is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you play as someone else in 3, and you play as Old Snake in 4 when he is at his worst, basically.
Right.
Right. And even in MGS1, he's kind of like, hey, I'm retired. Leave me alone. I'm crusty and old.
And in his appearances at MGS2, he's you're seeing him from Raiden's perspective, so that doesn't really... You don't get a good idea of what Snake is like. So you get a good idea of, like, who Snake is, what he believes in, how he views the world, what he values.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of war. He really does emphasize in MGS1 he sees everything in terms of the mission.
Mm-hmm.
He has nothing outside of the mission. Even if he is retired, he thinks of his life as a mission.
Right. Yeah, and, like, I think the whole, like, the big thing that Metal Gear Solid is about, quite literally, because we're going to be talking about Metal Gear Solid 3 a little bit in here anyways, is this notion that, like, a soldier can never truly leave the battlefield, right? Like, that's what Metal Gear Solid kind of is about. It's like, that's like, Raiden and Snake's whole bonding thing is that, like, they're the only people who get each other in terms of this notion of kind of always having your mind in one place and what it means to be kind of always on the battlefield, but also permanently disposable, because part of Metal Gear Solid 3's big thesis statement is that soldiers are a disposable class, and that is a bad thing. And then, of course, everybody grotesquely misunderstands what she means, but
we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
So it's, in a way, I was thinking about it today, in a way, it is also a reflection of Snake as a video game character.
Mm-hmm.
Because he thinks of things in terms of the objective.
Sure.
What is your next goal in the game? And I don't know if that's necessarily intentional from Kojima's perspective, but it's a fun analysis to think about, I think, is that in the terms of you can never leave the battlefield, Snake doesn't exist outside of the game.
Right. Yes?
Yeah.
I thought I was about to say something.
No, so apologies that I went silent there. I've just received notification that my PayPal password has appeared on a website.
Oh,
and so I'm real quick going and updating that. I
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think one of the most interesting things that I like about Metal Gear Solid 1 is the slow reveal that, like, as time goes on throughout MGS1, because, like, you know, a lot of the plot points that occur in it, while they do touch back on what happened in the first two Metal Gear games, like, how do I put this? They recontextualize it in a way that is, like, you can't talk about the first two Metal Gear games anymore, period, because Metal Gear Solid 1 is kind of like the jumping off point for just about everybody, including, like, to some degree, Kojima.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, like, realizing that Snake is the ultimate ideal of what Big Boss was kind of intending.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they update it in, like, 3 and then again in 4 to make it even more obvious that, like, we gotta flesh out Big Boss character more, so we have to give even more parallels and more things about what he is unable to achieve that Solid could.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is really kind of fascinating, especially when you compare him to, like, how even up until the very end, there are many, many, many instances where Liquid Snake was just a character you could not kill because you were not better than him.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting in how, in a lot of ways, like, this is retroactive justification, because none of this existed when Metal Gear Solid 1 came out.
Oh, yeah,
No, God,
Like,
no. This
and
is a lot of Kojima flying off the seat of his pants.
Yeah, and I really do like this idea of, like, taking something that I mean, the name Big Boss existed because you couldn't fit an actual name in the coding for Metal Gear,
Right.
and he's the final boss. He's the big boss.
He's the big boss of Metal
Yeah.
Gear.
They
Yeah.
couldn't
right.
actually fit. They couldn't fit final into his name, so
Yeah.
they had to shorten it to Big instead.
And so that's why he's just called that. And so you get this thing where, like,
big F's to the late F.
he's like he's more of a corpse MacGuffin in MGS1 than he is an actual character.
Right.
Yeah, because
But-
they're like, we want the corpse of Big Boss, and then, like, he does not ever show up. Like, the fact that they want the corpse of Big Boss is not ever materially relevant to that story.
Yeah.
really.
Right.
Right.
But you still get a good idea of the weight of his legacy and Solid and Liquid's connection to it. Even if it's something that Snake doesn't necessarily want any part of,
Right.
but Liquid insists upon it so much that Snake gets wrapped up in it anyway.
Yeah. And it's not really like a thing he can get away from. Kind of like the whole going back to the whole notion that you can never leave the battlefield. There are just, like, certain things about you that you can't escape. Which I think is neat. I think there's, like, a lot of kind of meat in even in Metal Gear Solid 1, which is, like, the most, what's the word, blatant about, like, I guess not blatant, but when it's, like, putting on its, like, what it's about, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's really just Kojima turning and looking directly at the camera, like, when he's doing it, right?
It's a lot of characters looking at you and saying, "This is what I'm about."
Right.
Because it was the PS1 and they couldn't even animate facial expressions.
That's right.
You need to have every boss monologue when they're dying so that you can get an idea of who these characters are, and it works.
It works.
In MGS1.
And it's so dramatic that they steal it for Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
That's right.
I do really like how, like, all of these long diatribes and rantings and ravings about motivations and the like is this really convoluted way of, like, MGS1 at its core is a really, like, roundabout way of being a found family versus, like, the blood relations kind of trope. But, like, in the dumbest way possible, and it still kind of works. 'Cause, like, Foxhound is like, they fight and they bicker, but they all kind of like each other. So, and Hal and Dave and Naomi could become, like, best buddies. All while everybody is locked into this horrible sibling battle that technically neither sibling have ever, like, truly met each other up until today.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that they try, and it works. It works. Brackets in MGS1, pushing the rivalry between Solid and Liquid. It works really well here, even though, like you said, they've never met before.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because, like, again, I know you haven't played MGSV, and, like, you'll get through it at some point. But it was one of the things when that was coming out, and, like, people realized very early during the pre-release stuff, like, oh, young Liquid's in this game. That's fucking crazy. I wonder if we're gonna have anything set up about why he is the way he is, or, like, if maybe him and Solid met when they were younger. Absolutely the fuck not.
No, not at all. Not one bit.
Not even remotely.
Not even the significance of Liquid in MGS5 is a footnote at best.
It is much like how deep spoilers for a video game that everybody already knows the plot twist for. How in Yakuza 0, Kiryu and Majima actually never meet.
Yeah.
It's the story about how they meet and they never meet.
Because
That's correct.
it's actually important that they meet in one. It is a lot like that reminds me. I'm going to make this comparison a lot because I'm pretty sure Kojima would be proud of me for doing so. It's a lot like in Star Wars how Gennady Tartakovsky and the staff of the Clone Wars cartoon, like the CG cartoon, had to bend over backwards and work out all kinds of plot lines so that General Grievous and Anakin did not actually meet in person because they only meet in person in the movie.
Right.
And Anakin has a line where he says, "I thought you'd be taller," which means he's never even seen Grievous.
Right.
So they absolutely cannot meet up.
Do you ever have to like do a bunch of narrative backflips to get around a plot point that only exists because it's a line that George Lucas thought it was funny when he was writing it?
His name is Glup Shitto.
Yeah.
But no, but because Metal Gear Solid 1 was probably intended to always just be its own thing and not really get a continuation ever, you are stuck with certain things like that, where you can't actually go back and analyze Solid and Liquid's relationship because they don't have one.
They don't have one, yeah, absolutely. It is kind of an interesting thing, like the whole, what is it? Every Metal Gear Solid, at least the first 4 Metal Gear Solid games all have like a theme. It's like a word that defines it. And the first one is gene, and the second one is meme. And then the third one is scene.
That's correct.
And then the last one is sense, which doesn't rhyme, Kojima.
No, it doesn't. But
And
Kojima gave up on a lot of things in 4.
And then we get Peace for Peace Walker because Peace Walker counts as the main series even though it's not numbered. And then V is Race, which woof. Someday we'll get to that whenever Ben finally plays Metal Gear Solid V.
They played us like a damn fiddle.
They played us like a damn fiddle. But no, so like the whole like theme of Metal Gear Solid 1 is gene and like fighting against your genes, quite literally in this case. It's very clever, Kojima. We get it.
Yeah, because Liquid wears them and Snake doesn't.
Yeah, get it. Well, yes, that too. But they're literally of the same genes, like because they're clones. Get it? It's very smart, Kojima. We love it. I do love it. The problem with Metal Gear Solid is the story of me going, okay, but I love it though. It's stupid.
But it's great.
Kojima is a hack, but also I like him, so it's fine.
Metal Gear could only exist in the state that it's in. That's
right. It can only ever be one thing. And yeah, it definitely does have the feeling, not so much that it was written to be like, to never get a sequel, but more so written in mind that like, I don't think anybody expected it to become what it became. It was a huge gamble on Konami's part to give that man so much money.
Here's my thinking on this. It's not that it was meant to be like, it wasn't meant to go anywhere. It is, in and of itself, the beginning of like a trilogy, because like, frankly, Metal Gear Solids 1, 2, and 3 are kind of their own thing, while 4 is it's almost like the beginnings of like a new series of trilogies or whatever. But Metal Gear Solid 1 is also the ending of the trilogy of like the first 2 Metal Gear games, trying to kind of cap off what all of that was about.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's like a thing that we have to keep in mind is that Kojima cut his teeth in the fucking MSX era, where the way you develop a video game is you and like 10 dudes just sort of get paid to make some shit up and just roll with it. And then in the PS1 era, it's still me and now 20 or 30 dudes are just making some shit up and rolling with it. And the fact that it continues to be a commercial success well into the 8th generation of consoles is frankly an unintended mistake.
Yeah.
It is simply not possible to make an argument that there was ever at any point a grand unified vision of Metal Gear Solid.
No.
And that gives it a lot of its interesting character, but it is also why you get such and we'll, I guess, go back to this more as we go on, like, why you get so many things like, oh, here's Metal Gear Solid 1. It's kind of a sequel to the original Metal Gears, but also no one played those, so it is in fact its own thing. But it's also still making lots of references to Metal Gear 1 and 2 that no one's going to get. And also it's kind of its own self-contained plot that doesn't really come up again except to reference that it happened. And then they do that like 5 times.
Yeah.
It just keeps happening.
It just keeps happening, and it's amazing that Metal Gear Solid was as big of a hit as I guess it's not that amazing.
Much like an 80s horror movie, it's a thing where it made perfect sense when there was one of them.
Yeah.
The existence of all future entries progressively makes that good first one feel more and more confusing.
And more insane with retrospect in mind, yeah.
It's way easier to make a sequel of something that justifies the first one than it is to make the first one justified as the first one.
Yeah.
It's like you can't, how do I put this? You can't make Metal Gear Solid, you couldn't add anything to Metal Gear Solid 1 because it was done. Right? You can only add things after the fact. So there's no way to enhance Metal Gear Solid 1 except for Twin Snakes, which doesn't really count. But like
saying it enhanced the original is also kind of a divisive statement.
Yeah.
It makes it more like Metal Gear Solid 2, and I don't think Metal Gear Solid, and like, well, we're not going to talk about Metal Gear Solid 2 a lot in this episode, but like, I don't think making it more like Metal Gear Solid 2 is strictly a bad thing, but I like MGS1 being MGS1 because it has a different quality that I think is I like those two. I want to have those meals on different days. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
that.
You want the roast beef on a different plate than your pancakes.
Yeah,
exactly. But
I don't want my roast beef to be more like pancakes more often than not. I think that kind of takes away some of what makes the roast beef appealing, even though I do like a good pancake either way.
But you can't. You can only use Metal Gear Solid 1 as reference material because nothing that gets added to the overall plot exists in Metal Gear Solid 1. Right? Like, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I get that.
Like, everything that makes you go, oh, that was actually that the whole time in Metal Gear. Like, the worst thing in Metal Gear Solid that we'll get to when we talk about 4, doesn't count because it didn't exist back then.
Right.
You can't hold it against Metal Gear Solid 1 for the things in Metal Gear Solid 1 that later games retroactively made bad.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it is, and this is because Kojima and the staff of Konami had no idea that any of this was going to exist in the future. It'd be different if, like, there was a plan in place.
Sure.
But MGS1 kind of exists kind of isolated from 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and Rising even. Because you very clearly did not intend for anything that happens in 2 onward.
Yeah, and it is really interesting that, like, so much... Like, there are obviously important plot points in 2 that can't exist without 1. But, like, like, 1 is such an interesting little beast because it is kind of squirreled away in its own little, like, weird transitional zone, if that makes sense, right? Because it's like you said, it's kind of like the middle point between Metal Gear and the rest of the Metal Gear Solid franchise. It's really interesting,
and you see this a lot in and around this era of video games with a lot of these big franchises in which the first one is very thematically different from everything that comes afterward.
Yeah, because, like, compared to the future stuff, Metal Gear Solid 1 is a fairly, like... It is not a particularly complicated story, honestly.
No.
You get the weirdness of the genes and, like, whatever, and, like, the legacy of Big Boss kind of near the end. But, like, for the most part, it's a pretty played straight, like, kind of Arkham Asylum-ass, I'm breaking in here, I'm gonna stop this crime that's gonna happen. And also there's a whole gaggle of freaks who have their own backstories, and isn't that kind of tragic?
It's interesting that it does set itself up as like a Pierce Brosnan James Bond era thing.
Yeah,
That allows us to segue really easily into what makes Snake Eater as good as it is, because it is very much a Roger Moore style James Bond film. Whips ass.
Well, as I say, it's worth noting that in the original MSX Metal Gear's Big Boss is just a legally distinct trace of Sean Connery.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Even 4, he does look like Sean Connery a lot still.
Yeah, I'm sure if Kojima, I'm sure if he could have and B, if the dude had not like at that point already just been like, no, I'm done making shit, I'm retired, like leave me alone. I'm sure Kojima would have tried to get the likeness right. He would have tried to do the face scan. 100%.
Was MGS4 was definitely post League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah, okay.
Extremely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that was Sean Connery was definitely retired by then.
He retired whenever he got tricked into doing the movie that he thought was a Garfield movie, but then wasn't, or something, or I'm thinking of Murray. Never mind.
Bill Murray, yeah.
Bill Murray. Sean Connery did, however, also I believe get tricked into making a movie that he thought was from a director that he wanted to work with, but was just from someone with a similar name.
Yeah,
I believe that exact same thing happened to him.
But no, I do want to touch on a few other things in MGS1 before we switch to 3, which is where the meat of, 3 and 4 are obviously where the meat of the discussion is going to be. But there is a lot of good stuff in 1. I mean, it's the introduction of the best character in the franchise, which is Revolver Ocelot.
Otacon.
That's correct.
I think I agree with Ben here. Yeah.
I think everyone agrees with Ben, but I thought it'd be really funny.
Well, you got assigned the name Otacon, so you have to stand up for you have to stand up for yourself. I get it.
Look. I'm allowed to like one weeb per franchise.
That's correct. And listen, Otacon is a good boy.
He is.
I mean, okay, maybe not, but like we like him. Okay.
The thing with Revolver Ocelot is that like Kojima, even if he didn't plan what happens with Revolver Ocelot in the later games, very clearly was laying the groundwork to be like someone who is out here making Vriskas in the year of our Lord 1998.
Yeah, for sure.
If Vriska hadn't even been invented yet, it would have been for like 12, 13 years, and he's out here pioneering Vriskas.
Just a guy.
Vriska is a Revolver Ocelot.
I guess that's true, except not nearly as ultimately charming.
No. Vriska pales in comparison to Revolver Ocelot, of course.
Sorry, Vriska.
But no. They even get robot arms. Fuck.
That's right.
Oh no, it's starting!
Oh fuck me.
One day there's gonna be a week where I'm not gonna be around, and we're gonna need to record an episode, and I'm just gonna throw a bomb into our group chat that's just like do a Homestuck episode.
And Ben, they both chose the way they fight specifically because they think it's cool and for no other reason.
Oh fuck. But no, Revolver Ocelot is a great character because he was.
We gotta get out of there. Ben's doing his best to get us out of there.
I'm gonna drag this whole podcast down with me. Anyway, by the way, we have a Patreon if you want to give us money for some fucking reason.
Oh God, no.
Please.
Look forward to that Skya you're walking into.
You couldn't pay me enough to host that. I would sooner bite the bullet. I'm sorry, it's not happening.
But no, Ocelot is a very interesting character because he's set up along with the rest of Foxhound, and he fits the naming convention with the rest of Foxhound, right? Sniper Wolf, Vulcan Raven, Revolver Ocelot, like he fits right along there. And it kind of feels like that Kojima forgot he didn't kill him. Because, you have your boss fight, and he gets his arm cut off, and he runs away, and it's like, you would expect him to die like the others. Like, why would he live? But he's like, you got to the end of the script, and you're like, oh yeah, he's still kicking. He's actually still running around.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I think even if Kojima didn't finish Metal Gear Solid 1 intending to make a Metal Gear Solid 2, the guy has watched enough schlocky-ass 80s movies to know the real trick for saving your ass for when you have a sequel is to leave one plot thread unaddressed, and not like a major one that makes people scratch their heads, but one that people would be forgiven not for noticing, which is to say that after he's like, haha, got you, you activated the nukes or whatever, he just disappears from the script.
Yeah. And then he comes back for the post credits. You know, but it is just the camera zooms in on the villain as they're laying there dead, and then their eyes open and it cuts to black.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Fox died, I think, again. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get to that in Metal Gear Solid 4.
Like, I can guarantee when it got to the scene at the end in the post-credit scene where he's talking on the phone to Mr. President about something or other, Hideo Kojima writing that dialogue had absolutely no idea what it was about.
Yeah. No. It was straight up the Kingdom Hearts 2 or Kingdom Hearts post credits. Another side, another story. Where it's just, this is a concept. If you give me more money to make a sequel, I'll do something with this.
I'll do something with Ocelot and the President.
He did not know at the time that the President was Solidus.
Oh no, there wasn't a Solidus until Metal Gear Solid 2.
It does make me mad that, like, side note, even though we're not going to talk much about 2 right now, it still makes me super mad that they use Solidus instead of, like, I don't know, Plasma Snake.
Vapor Snake.
Yeah.
It's because the idea is that Solidus isn't supposed to be a third. He's supposed to be like the perfected iteration of Solid and Liquid, which ended up not being true because he also got the Benjamin Button disease, and
he did get that super hard.
He got Benjamin Button super hard. Yeah.
He was 37 years old in that video game that we're talking about on the next episode, and not this one.
Wait, he's 37 in 2?
37.
Shut up, Kojima. You
like 6 months older than Solid.
No.
That's
okay.
crazy. So I want to ask, besides Ocelot, who is your favorite Foxhound member?
Psycho Mantis. Easy.
Yeah, if we're not allowed, it's probably Psycho Mantis. If we're not allowed to repeat, I'll go ahead and take Sniper Wolf. Because I just like an edgy hot girl. Like, I don't know, I'm simple. Someone has to look out for all those Japanese video game white Kurdish women.
It is not gonna be me.
You know, those blonde-haired, blue-eyed women who are
Kurdistan?
Kurdish. Yeah, or from Kurdistan. Yeah,
with a Russian accent.
You know.
A Russian accent. They gave up after a while.
Now look, to be fair, that would have been an occupied territory during the Cold War. So, like, anything's possible. But I'm not saying you shouldn't put him on the tree. I'm just saying, like, it's okay if the rope's a little long. He might figure a way out of it. I don't know. He'll probably die, but, like, you can give him a little hope.
Give him a little hope. All right, fine.
All right. It is a toss-up for me between Psycho Mantis and Vulcan Raven. I think those
like
two
Vulcan
whip
Raven.
ass.
I love his terrible accent. I just love his whole vibe. Is like extremely funny character, 10 out of 10 kind of guy.
Unlike prior Metal Gear, like other Metal Gear things, like, oh, this cool thing in Metal Gear Solid 1 got ruined by a later Metal Gear Solid thing. For me, Vulcan Raven is ruined for a completely different reason, which is I cannot see or hear him without thinking about Measurehead from Disco Elysium. Yeah! Aside from being a dark-skinned bald guy who's, like, hugely muscular compared to everyone else, he's also the one who's talking about race science.
Yeah.
Why did you have to replace the connotation I had? I just thought he'd be like, you know, he's like the prototypical, heavy TF2 man.
Yeah, that's what I liked about him too, that he is just kind of like heavy.
He's just heavy. Thanks, Saturn.
He's Measurehead now.
It's Psycho Mantis. It's Psycho Mantis now. Thanks, Saturn.
He's got the head tattoos and everything.
It's true though. Psycho Mantis.
It's got to be Psycho Mantis. Playing with gameplay or with game ideas. in that is always
It's a
fun
way to
thing.
prove that he's a psychic.
Now, I'm
So
going
fucking funny.
I'm going to make an argument here for a dark horse honorable mention contender.
Okay.
Don't say
I'm
decoy.
willing to give it to Decoy
Don't
Octopus
give it to
for
Decoy
being
Octopus.
for fucking up so royally that he dies 15 minutes into the game without you even knowing it was him until several hours later.
Yeah, that is really good.
That's why you don't give it to him.
No, he makes Johnny Sasaki look competent.
It's very No More Heroes-esque of the blatant of, yeah, we had an idea, but we couldn't do it, so he's dead.
We didn't have time for that boss
It's the
fight.
bit in No More Heroes 2 when you're starting No More Heroes 2, it's like, oh, it's 100 assassins instead of 10, and I wonder how that's going to work. And you get to one fight where it's just like, there's 50 guys in this fight, and then they all immediately get killed by one other guy, and then you have to fight that single guy. It's like, oh, okay.
It's one of my favorite gags in No More Heroes 2, which is Travis reports to like a battle royale, but he's behind a door and to the arena, and he thinks it's locked, so he doesn't try it, and he's just like waiting for someone to let him in. By the time he tries the door, the battle royale is over, and there's only one guy left.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But no, I do love when it's like we forgot, we ran out of time and couldn't actually put him in, but we put him in like the game, so we got to use him for something.
We didn't have time to develop another boss fight.
I think it's a much funner plot twist if that was actually kind of the entire intent, where like they had the character design and they went, I already know we don't have the budget for it. Can we just put him in as like the NPC who dies super early on?
Yeah,
like,
really
that's
good.
actually really funny.
Because they made that asset, and they're like, well, we're in the PS1 days. We can't just not use an asset we made. This low poly model costs $50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about Kojima games, and this almost certainly also applies to Metal Gear Solid 1, the video game that nobody has animated mouths in, is that my man loves to go over budget and behind schedule. It's like his favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta know. Metal Gear Solid 1 was like that too. There was somebody in the office like banging on Kojima's door like, hey asshole, it's time to ship. And they're like, oh fuck, just finish the game.
Just get it out. We're
get
done.
it out. Yeah, it rules.
I'm surprised Decoy Octopus did not become more relevant in like other things. Like,
It's really
retroactively.
funny that he didn't.
Now, here's the thing. I'm not, because like we said with Metal Gear Solid 1, a lot of that game disappears into the memory hole.
Yeah, like what's
Yeah.
her face? The
Natasha.
other Russian chick?
Natasha.
Yeah,
Natasha.
Natasha is gone forever.
Yeah, I think literally there's an optional codec call in 4 that mentions her by name once, and that's all you get.
That's it, which is amazing. Because Metal Gear Solid 4 is a game that cannot stop calling back to every other Metal Gear Solid,
which-
sometimes mostly to its detriment.
I'll talk about that later.
Yeah, okay, hold on. And it's just like, oh, they didn't call back to Natasha. It's so weird. It's very funny.
She was busy hanging out with Boris as they chased Moose and Squirrel.
They were chasing Moose and Squirrel. Yes, exactly.
But no, that's really all I have to say about Metal Gear Solid 1, because a lot of it is more important in later games anyway.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
like that.
Worth talking about. Like, I could talk about the Colonel, but I'm going to talk about the Colonel when we talk about Metal Gear Solid 2.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
And Metal Gear Solid 4 for Roy Campbell.
Yeah,
same-
I think it makes sense to isolate him to
Same-
Jean Maivu.
Yeah, same with Naomi. Like, I don't have anything to say about Naomi in this game, but I do have a lot to say when you talk about 4.
That's right.
I'm sad that her accent's gone in Metal Gear Solid 4. But
Yeah, same with Mei Ling.
Granted, to be fair, like, especially for, I forget who they got to do, who's the voice actor for Mei Ling. I think it's okay if we have less white people doing, like, bad Chinese accents.
What's
Sure.
Jennifer Hale?
Jennifer Hill is
Naomi.
It's Naomi.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
So she could have done a British accent, but I guess Kojima decided he preferred her sounding more American for some reason.
Sure.
But they did largely get rid of the accents of like fucking everyone who came back from MGS1 for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
Now to be slightly fair, Mei Ling's voice actress is not American. She's not white, she's Vietnamese.
Oh.
I mean, that's like, but like,
That's
I guess it's still a thing of like, you still have a Vietnamese person playing a Chinese.
Yeah, it's
character,
not.
and, like, I'm gonna
That's
do
not
my Chinese off the boat accent, which also doesn't necessarily track if that person is like just so happens to be
Right.
Vietnamese, but isn't like like someone who has a pronounced accent or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense that they dialed it back for some of those because 1998 was a very different dubbing ecosystem than 2008. But you know, it is also part of the bad. Like, it is part of. Like, I guess we can wrap up MGS1 with this. It is part of the pastiche of MGS1 that I think is sadly missing from every other Metal Gear game, including 3, which is that it is just like the fucking like cigar chomping schlockiest Bond movie you can imagine.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
It is the most 80s action spy thriller of the entire series, and like Metal Gear Solid 3, despite being immaculate, is a different kind of Bond movie.
Right. Yeah, it's Dr. No.
The fact that Snake actually does wear a shirt throughout all of MGS1 is
It's
probably
stunning.
one of the most surprising things about MGS1.
No, he does remove the shirt at some point.
Yeah, that's
Well, when he's
true.
getting tortured, but like,
He also doesn't put it back on until after they escape from the base, I think.
yeah.
yeah, that's true. Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
He does appropriately to an 80s action movie spend third act shirtless the entire time.
Yep.
As God intended.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about MGS1. Like I said, more of it's going to be brought up retroactively when we do 3 and 4. So,
Sure.
anyone else have any final thoughts about 1?
Nope.
Nope, I got mine out of my system.
Okay, let's talk about Metal Gear Solid 3
Oh,
Dun
God.
dun dun dun.
and how it's
Da-da.
one of the greatest video games ever made.
Yeah.
My transition here is that it's really fucked up that Metal Gear Solid 1 is, I think, arguably the best PS1 game. But it is not the best Metal Gear Solid game. That honor goes to Metal Gear Solid 3, which, even though good, is probably only like guaranteed a podium placer in the best PS2 games.
That's very true.
That's just what the PS2 was.
The PS2 was insane.
That was an era.
Resident
Yeah.
Evil 4 is stiff competition, and like, I love Metal Gear Solid 3, but I can't necessarily guarantee it's going to win out every time.
Oh God, no! I think Resident Evil 4 is a better game than Metal Gear Solid 3, which is really fucking saying something.
It's
but, like,
crazy to me that they're contemporaries.
They are contemporaries.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which
Wow.
is fucking whack. Yeah.
Same year, I think, actually. Because
That's
MGS3 is
crazy.
2005, and I think
What?
Resident Evil 4 is either 2005 or like 2006.
Would that be DMC2 then? As the other contemporary?
Woof.
No, not
That's
2.
rough.
You mean 3.
If it's 3, then yeah, then fantastic. I
Well,
think.
no, because 4
No.
would... Resident Evil 4 would have predated...
Devil May Cry 2 is 2003, so
See?
that's earlier. DMC3 is 2005, so same year as DMC3.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just double check. RE4 is also 2005. 2005 might just be one of the best years for video games.
It was a
Those
really
video
good
game
fucking
Dang.
year.
Oh shit!
Prince of Persia remake, I think, was 2005 too.
Oh, wow.
Remake?
No, you mean Sands of Time, right?
Yeah, like the
Excuse me, Sands of Time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the good ass
Well,
PS2
that
one was
was-
2005. The
that
remake
Sands-
was 2007 or 2008, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, MGS3, Snake Eater.
Snake.
Wow.
You get it, huh?
Holy crap.
I think it's very funny that, speaking of Resident Evil 4, this was the year that you, like, I know you haven't done, like, the OG Resident Evil 4 yet, but you did do the remake. So you do understand, to a certain degree, like, you get it now, vis-a-vis Resident Evil 4.
Mhm.
And then you also get to get it now about Metal Gear Solid 3.
which is, it's insane how good everything about this game, just like RE4, like the pacing of Metal Gear Solid 3 is phenomenal.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's a little slow rolling at the start. I remember it being a source of friction, but then like once you get into like the actual game, you're buckled into that game more or less. Like, there's some cutscenes, but it's mostly focused on you doing your jungle survival shit.
Once I figured out what the game wanted me to do with its mechanics, is when it became a lot smoother. And if I replayed it now, that intro would go a lot quicker.
Yeah, and I think it's like, it is a testament to the quality of that game and like the cylinders it's firing on, that like, even having seen you play through it and seeing like, okay, this is the size of these environments are, they're actually like pretty constrained. Still in my memory, that game is larger than it is. Like, it is impossible for me to not categorize that game as like a 20 to 30 hour game, even though it's like 12.
Yeah. It's like it's like the longest. It's the longest Metal Gear Solid game, but that doesn't mean much in a franchise where like the average runtime is like, 6 to 7 hours, maybe pushing 8 or 9, Like, and yeah, so Metal Gear Solid 3 is like long and it feels so much more expansive than it is, and it's just like it does an extremely good job of hiding the fact that it's not actually an open world Metal Gear Solid, right?
Yeah, no,
like,
it's playing pretend really well.
And
yeah.
It is definitely helped out by the fact that you are going to a lot of different places. You're not stuck in one facility the entire game.
And also, like, you're progressing through the areas in a fairly linear order, but because the areas themselves are so, like, big and open and, like, don't necessarily have a tight flow, it's like, you don't feel like you're being corralled through a hallway, even though MGS3 is, like, a pretty linear game in terms of, like, how you're meant to go through those environments.
Right. It is a lot like Resident Evil 4 in that aspect, in which you are switching away from a more location-based, like going, backtracking type situation to a more linear thing, but keeping the spirit of exploration.
Right.
Yeah, it does make me think a lot of like a weird call forward. It reminds me a lot of like the way that the like Dark Souls 3 especially is structured, where you have these big complex environments that you can explore, but they chain together in a linear way, but it still makes you kind of feel like you're getting that open world exploration itch, even though you're just kind of going down a winding hallway for the most part.
I think one of the other things that I really like about it is that it all takes place kind of like within a really small, like maybe 5 or 6 square mile area, but the locales all are different enough that you feel like you kind of were world trekking for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Really, again, much like how Metal Gear Solid 1 was like a really good bottle episode version of it, this captures the idea of like a globe-trotting spy movie really well.
Yeah.
And while staying in the same kind of Russian jungle, But yeah, no, it's like this game has some of the most, just rewatching Ben playing it, it's so much fun because, and it was the thing we talked about when we were talking about the potentiality of a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, is MGS3 has just such a look, right?
Yeah.
It has such like strong aesthetic senses. It really kind of hones in on everything that's good in Metal Gear Solids like 1 and 2, and then like really tightens that all of those like aesthetic trappings in. Because like I love Metal Gear Solid 2 a lot. I don't think it's a very good looking game. I think it's extremely gray.
Yeah, that is an early PS2 game.
Yeah,
you are especially playing them back to back like this, going from the blues and grays and like very muted greens of 1 and 2 to just these lush jungle environments.
Yeah, and
well, it's like even 1's like more colorful than 2 because it has like it's so much more saturated and has like a way wider like depth of color to it.
Yeah, like 2, like 1 has got like so much like it's so cinematic. 2 is so flat, like its lighting is so insanely flat, and 3 is where like Kojima's like, all right, lighting, I should do that.
Cinema.
Cinematography.
MGS3 is just genuinely like a really phenomenal example of like how to do not just like level design, but specifically like level creation of like, here's the assets we're using, here's the camera angles we're using, the lighting stuff, whatever, in making something that feels bigger and more real than it actually is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can tell this is the one that he really wanted to make because it's the only one with like a big dramatic intro.
Yeah. It's awesome fucking Bond movie intro that kicks so much ass. Yeah, it rules.
The only Bond movie that has a better intro than this is Skyfall.
That's right.
Skyfall is really fucking good.
It's Snake Eater and Skyfall, the best Bond movie openers.
Yeah.
I think Shia mentioned it in the Discord at some point. But he was like, part of the thing with MGS3 is that when Kojima was making it, the thing that he knew for certain is, I was born in 1964 or 1963, I forget which. Mm-hmm. I want to make a video game set in that same year. And he was really disappointed that, sadly, the assassination of JFK was a year off. And it is frankly a remarkable show of restraint that he did not simply change the year that JFK was assassinated.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
He wanted to so badly.
He really wanted Virtuous Mission to be about the boss killing JFK.
Which is the thing the boss absolutely did. The boss 100% killed JFK, but that's neither here nor there.
So fucking stupid.
It's
I
so
love Metal
fucking
Gear.
stupid.
I love Metal Gear's timeline.
Metal Gear Solid 3 is just like... It's just... I know that this is like the episode where we talk about Solid Snake or like the snakes in general. However... We're talking about Metal Gear Solid 3. We have to talk about how much the boss kicks ass. The boss kicks ass.
Yeah, no.
The boss is also a snake, so you know what?
That's true. There you go.
No, the boss being one of the greatest video game characters of all time, contrasts really, really well with the actual striking differences between Solid and Naked.
Sure.
Despite everything that Naked Snake acts like or presents himself as, he is very much a rookie.
Yeah.
He feels so much more amateurish than Solid does in 1 and 2.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because mostly because like Virtuous Mission and Snake Eater are like, they're not his first missions, but they are chronologically on the Metal Gear Solid timeline. His first missions, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's like in his mid-20s in that game, I want to say.
And I don't think there are any bits in like later Metal Gear Solid games that are set before MGS3.
No,
right?
this is the first time.
Mm-hmm.
This is the earliest appearance of Big Boss.
Well,
so in that way, that's what makes him
of
feel like such a rookie, you know?
Yeah.
And again, like, it is a testament, because it's some other things we talked about in Discord, a testament reading through like some of the stories of the development of this video game that the boss actually came out one of the coolest video game characters of all time, because there were so many near misses.
Yeah.
There are so many times somebody like it stopped Kojima from doing something stupid and ruining this extremely cool character he constructed. The boss is cool despite Kojima. Not because of Kojima.
I think this is the thing that we'll talk about more in the Jamais Vu episode, but I want to bring it up now because it's going to be important later. Hideo Kojima does not have any clue how to write or conceive of women, period.
No, not at all.
Every good woman character he has made in the game has been on accident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think constantly about the interview where he explained the original design philosophy for her C-section scar.
Listen, now if she had the titty out, I probably would have been like, but it's based though. But the the bouncing part to make it look like a snake laughing, that is stupid. I'm sorry, Kojima. You lose me there. You do lose me there.
The reason he wanted to do that is because he wanted the snake to laugh? What are you talking about?
Because she's the joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's
so-
supposed to have a snake tattoo on her titty, and then she'd fire her machine gun, and it'd make her boob bounce, and it looked like the snake was laughing.
It would do the little laugh from
Yeah, exactly. It'd do the laugh from Movie Neko, yeah.
And the problem is, I hear this and I can fucking see it in MGS3, like cutscene vision,
Oh,
just like
no.
the kind of
Yeah.
weird, like
Can't.
motion blur interpolation and like the tight zoom in on just this low res PS2 nipple with a snake tattoo around it.
This is something that I'll bring up a lot in MGS4.
Mm-hmm.
In which there's a world where you can pull that idea off.
Sure.
But it can't happen in Snake Eater.
It can't happen with Hideo Kojima.
No.
Again, if she had maybe had like one boob out, fine. I get it. You're making like an Amazon Warrior reference. Cool. But the additional step is too much, Kojima.
If this had been a No More Heroes character,
Sure.
it would have had a better chance of being pulled off.
Oh yeah, Suda could just steal that idea directly for a character in a Suda game and no one blink.
No, not at all.
Suda could have put that on Killer 7 if not for the fact that Nintendo would have probably cut off his head with a rock if he tried to put a boob on the GameCube.
That could have been one of the other girls in Dragon Guard 3, and I wouldn't have batted an eye either.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, no.
God no. That's
That may as well be text for a character in Dragon Guard 3.
Yeah.
I'm imagining. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm imagining the world where that person did it. Where that idea appeared as an assassin in No More Heroes, but because it was on the Wii, there was a big black sensor bar over her boob,
and the boob was, and the sensor bar was bouncing wildly.
Yeah, and so Travis had to explain what the situation is.
Ben, I really need you to play No More
Heroes 3. Yeah.
Like, well, there is literally one of the earliest fights in that game. There's a thing where there's a kind of impressive technical aspect of the game, and Travis is like, how the fuck did you do that? How much money did you spend on this fight? It's the second boss. Come on.
Well said, and I've said it before, I'll say it now. Get ready for More Heroes.
I'm not gonna be here for that. Sorry, Sarah, you and me won't be available.
It's fine.
Oh, if you're only gonna be gone for a little bit, we can work around that. It's not gonna be as long as Metal Gear Solid.
That's fair.
There's only 4 games, and at least two of them are really short.
But
no, the boss is an amazing fucking character from the minute you meet her. Mm-hmm. And she just throws Snake off a bridge.
Yeah, just like the casualness of which she just kind of like exists. There's something so like interesting in the way the boss is written, because it got brought up when we were streaming, like how much her voice just sounds like an English teacher, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
No, she's very casual. She's very composed and calm the entire game.
The whole game, even at the very end when it's like, yeah, Snake, you have to kill me, she just says everything so like cool and matter-of-factly that it's I don't know if it's like a case of like weird voice direction becoming part of the art, i.e. Silent Hill 2, or what. But yeah, no, it's like really weird to me. It's great, but she's just so cool and interesting. Like,
I think it's totally intentional, because the voice acting in Metal Gear Solid as a whole is really good.
It's really, really good. Yeah.
There's no way that her voice actress did that unintentionally. She was directed to sound calm and composed the entire time.
Oh yeah, because unlike Silent Hill 2, Metal Gear Solid is dubbed by professionals instead of just being we want weirdos. We want the cheapest imaginable voice actors.
We want for infamously for Harry we want the dad of someone else who is auditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's
for her,
my
like James's voice actor was on. I think he was on the Best Friends, the Best Friend cast, talking about that.
That wasn't. I don't think it was. Oh yeah, it was James Sunderland.
Yeah, it was Silent Hill 2.
It wasn't Harry Mason. It was
No,
James Sunderland.
But like his daughter had gone in for an audition for something, and they brought him in to do a voice too, just for the hell of it.
I see. Interesting. It's a weird thing, and I'm going to make this comparison now because it just came to my brain, and I'm not going to remember it later to inflict violence on people. It really does feel like Metal Gear Solid 3, the boss, ran so that Metroid Other M. Samus could walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Because it really feels like the direction for her is very specifically kind of maternal, but like just stoic and affectless for the most part.
Right.
Like someone,
Yeah.
like someone who is wiser than you, even though you are a 27-year-old fucking like Green Beret or whatever Naked Snake's thing is. Like, that's still his mom. He's a 27-year-old man with no blood relation to her, and that's still his mom.
It's like it's like when you drop the bomb that Senator Armstrong is the ontological opposite of the boss.
Yeah, exactly. Which I guess we'll get to in the next episode as well.
We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. I have so much to say about Senator Armstrong. Oh my god. But no, MGS3 is easily the best one ever because of all these amazing characters.
Sure.
You get
the
Major
Cobra
Ocelot.
unit, the Cobra unit is miles ahead of the other quirky mini boss squads.
Oh sure, Dead Cell and Foxhound, like, yeah.
I don't personally agree because, like, I don't think my problem is that really none of them have like, even though they have a tighter theme, none of them really have like particularly strong character narratives at all, which is the thing that I like. Which is like MGS2 is the weakest because it's like three dudes, one of whom isn't even a real character, and the other two are just kind of like Fortune and Vamp, right?
Freaks.
But like for me, MGS1 is still like, here's your squad of like 4 or 5 goons who all have their specific aesthetics, their things that they're good at, and their like tragic backstories about why they're here, and that is to me what is like the meat of a Metal Gear Solid bad guy squad.
The other thing, like the other part to add to like just kind of the rich, hearty taste of Foxhound for me personally is the realization that Solid Snake has with each and every one of them as like he's holding their dying bodies, that these very well could have been like best friends if they had been in Foxhound together.
Yeah, you get like a lot of character narrative there that like I don't think Metal Gear Solid 3 necessarily had room for it, because Metal Gear Solid 3 is not about that in the same way as Metal Gear Solid 1 is. But it is the thing that still makes me think that I prefer Foxhound overall, but like, it's a close second.
I think I greatly prefer the Cobra unit because of fitting in with the theme of loyalty and how loyal they are to the boss.
Right.
Along with everything else. And just their presence. Even without their backstory or characterization, those boss fights and those their existence in the room.
Sure, and they're like not necessarily their characterization vis-a-vis like development, but just their personalities and how big they are and how like how overpowering all of them are. Like, I get that too, totally. Like, I feel like Foxhound is a little bit more fleshed out, but the Cobra unit is so like strong just by being like these insane boss fight characters, right?
All I'm gonna say is the end took me an hour to kill, and it was one of the best hours of video games I've ever played.
Oh, it's one of the best boss fights in like video games. Like
that is like, even if Metal Gear Solid 3 doesn't win the gold medal for best PS2 game, I think the end wins the gold medal for best PS2 boss fight. It's fucking
easily.
It is a miracle that fight works.
That's it. The fact that they could pull that off. I still think about the end fight. Like, when I replay Metal Gear Solid 3 eventually, I'm thinking, I get to redo the end fight.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's just like the craziest version of the sniper battle. Because like the sniper battle in 1 is so like you know,
Nothing.
it's
very-
nothing, but it's very tense at the same time because,
Yeah.
like, you know, it's you and Sniper Wolf, and, like, you can see, like, every time you're aiming at her, she's aiming at you, right?
Yeah.
And, like, there's that kind of tension of reflexes and stuff happening there. That's really kind of fun and interesting, but it's over pretty quickly.
It is just red and blue sniper shooting each other over the balconies in 2 Fort.
That's right.
Sure.
But also, like, you know, it's a PS1. You have a functioning sniper battle that works inside the game's normal space, which is also impressive for that game.
Make sure you try aiming your gun at 20 frames a second.
That's right.
No, yes, nothing against Sniper Wolf. Sniper Wolf was a great fight, but, like, the
end is like it's like the ideological conclusion to a sniper battle.
Yeah.
None of them. You can't really compare any other sniper battle to that.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's to the extent that like they keep trying to put that sniper battle in every other Metal Gear game after this, except for Peace Walker, I think, because Peace Walker you don't fight dudes, and it's like. Even with the power of the PS4, Metal Gear Solid V's sniper battle just does not compare even remotely.
Not at all.
However, you can resolve that one by airdropping cardboard boxes full of food on top of the sniper until you knock her out, which is also great.
One of those great... will this work? Oh, it worked. Okay, cool. It's something I'll talk more about in 2, but I just want to bring it because it does come up a little bit in 3, where it's... These games have, like... When 2 onward have like, 2 modes, which is... Hey, you thought outside the box and figured out a unique solution to this riddle. Good for you. Or it's, you thought that would work? You fucking idiot. You imbecile. Fuck you. I hate you. You're a moron.
We programmed a dialogue option in this game specifically to make fun of you for thinking this specific trick would work. You're so dumb.
You absolute buffoon. Get fucked. Turn the game off.
I will for 2 weeks. Oh, that's too long. Please turn the game back on before that.
Kojima starts sending you text messages.
Yeah.
Please turn the video game back on. Do the sniper battle that I programmed, that I worked so hard to program.
Kojima text, he doesn't love you like I do. Kojima text, sends you $500 on PayPal. It's turning the PS2 off for 2 weeks text. Hey, baby, your daddy long days back in LA. What's going on?
Yeah.
But no, the end is obviously great, but everything, the sorrow is amazing. The all of them are just fucking stellar boss fights. Even the fear, which is probably my least favorite.
The pain.
The pain. The pain is the one that like the pain and the fear are so goofy.
I love them.
But
like, you also, for what it's worth, you get pains after you just finished having a cool ass cliff shootout with Ocelot.
Well, you had a cool arcade light gun shootout with Ocelot.
Yeah, which is what you want.
Yeah, which this is, besides 4, this is Ocelot's best appearance.
Oh yeah.
You get it. You get why he's obsessed with Big Boss.
It's so funny. It's so hacky. Like, in my heart of hearts, I should hate it because it's so corny. It's the Metal Gear Solid, or no, it's the Solo movie thing, where they have to explain everything,
right?
But like good instead of bad because it's so hacky.
I think part of what makes this work when normally that shit annoys me to no end is because this is the bit where it goes, no, this is what makes the entire ending of the series work.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you know that, like, oh, it's not just that he, like, uses revolvers because Big Boss said that to him once. It's that fondness was so like, you can see the light turn on in his eyes when he resolves right then and there. I am going to kill and die for this man for the rest of my life, whether that's 6 months or 40 years.
It was because they actually made it important.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was the Big Boss or Naked Snake telling Ocelot to use revolvers was important to his character. It wasn't, that's where we got the name. It was this. We're using this to build the relationship and give you the starting point as to why Ocelot is so loyal to Big Boss.
And I feel like part of this too, for when it comes up in Metal Gear Solid 4 and stuff, is that there is a fun, like, you don't really notice it too much like the first time through Metal Gear Solid 3, especially considering that, like, there are facts about Ocelot's life that are canon that you only find out about because they say that they're canon in the Extreme DVDs, which is very funny. But Big Boss is largely like someone who has a very similar kind of background and circumstances to Major Ocelot, where he's forced to be a disposable pawn in these complicated wars that he doesn't really understand because he's basically has a collar around his throat from the Patriots for his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just that he loves Big Boss, which is part of it, but it's also like you get this sense that Ocelot not only wants to free himself from the Patriots, but also wants to free the man he loves from the Patriots. And it's like seeing that blossom with even just the littlest thing of the way you fire a gun, you'd be better suited for a revolver and MGS3 is like, oh, okay, it's that little bit of warmth and kindness, and that's all it takes.
And it's love. It's just like...
True love.
It's true love. It blossoms immediately. Love can blossom on the battlefield, people.
Yes, it
turns
can.
out.
And it's between...
Otacon knew.
Otacon knew. It's between Ocelot and Big Boss in that moment. It's beautiful.
Bye.
The end of this game kicks ass.
When Naked Snake tells Ocelot that he should try using revolver, Ocelot has that, like, oh, I'm the Bond girl.
Yeah.
It's me!
Get out of the way, Eva!
Move it, Floozy. I'm trying to get some.
My identity has been stolen.
By the way, Ben, I know we put it off during the stream, so we didn't tell you directly. Did you ever find out, like, the reveal for Ocelot's parents?
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the thing I was referring to offhand when I mentioned something that we know about Ocelot's life that was only confirmed in the Extreme DVDs. His mom is the boss, and his dad is the Sara.
Yeah, he's that baby. Yeah,
He's the baby they stole from the boss, and he has been a agent for the Patriots for his literal entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Does he know that?
I don't remember.
I have no idea.
I don't believe he directly knows that, actually.
I think it's a thing that he might find out later, but like not during MGS3.
Yeah.
Okay.
If he finds out, it's probably like between MGS 5 and 1, if he ever does at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like one of those things that 3 kind of like extremely implies, and like I remember coming away from 3 even when I was like a teenager, like getting out of it and thinking like, oh, Ocelot is the boss's kid. And then I found out later that like it isn't actually directly confirmed anywhere in the game, and it had to be confirmed later by. But I guess it's just that the game implies it so heavily that you just kind of naturally make those two.
Yeah, it's just subtext in the game itself. So like
Sure.
Kojima basically goes like out and out says it at some point. Like, yes, that is what we're trying to say here.
Yeah,
I do actually have the Extreme DVDs if we ever want to try watching them, but I think they might be only in Japanese, so I don't think that necessarily.
I will not be translating that. Not in real time.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say
I can do live letters like on text because like I have the time to do it. I'm not doing that for a DVD watch. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Just it's just speaking aloud the entire time.
Yeah.
I don't have the brain power to be a translator, else I would.
Yeah, that's good money.
But yeah, no, I think every character has such presence in this, and this is the first time you really get that.
Mm-hmm.
You got it in MGS2, but like not the entire cast, like 3 has, in which every character is just so powerful.
Yeah. Like, everybody has so much, like, personality and like, you just really establish, like, what everybody is about and how everybody acts and kind of, and just, they have so much, I don't even know. It just has so much screen presence, I guess is the word, right?
You get a one-off, I don't even remember his name, but like the Russian guy that you run into, and he just talks about Metal Gears for a while.
Yeah.
He's great!
Yeah, everybody's good. It's very interesting.
Look at these!
Yeah.
Nice shoes.
Yeah, he's talking about his shoes, and he's like talking about like the quote-unquote benefits of capitalism and like the war economy and how great it is, and 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 then he's dead, and then you're like, oh, I'm sad because he was such a fun character.
Yeah, Volgan puts him in a barrel and just fucking microwaves him with his fists.
Yeah.
Volgan is such a great Bond villain.
He's such a piece of shit. I love that he just has like electric powers.
That man, if he was allowed to survive, would make a perfect Blofeld.
Yeah.
Perfect. Pitch perfect.
He's an extremely. It's one of those things like he's like dead serious in MGS3, except for the fact that like he's so hammy or whatever. Like he's just like you're supposed to take him seriously villain as the villain, but it is also he is like one of the funniest characters in all. Like if not for the fact that we get Revengeance, which I'll talk about in the next podcast, and we get Armstrong in that, he would be de facto the funniest bad guy in all of Metal Gear.
I have an amazing visual because now that I said it, now that I've envisioned it, Blofeld with like a giant white Persian, and he pets it once, and all of the hair just falls off, and it turns into a Sphinx because the electricity like I figured I could do like a Metal Gear Solid like a 3.5. Have Volgan come back and he's just a Blofeld joke all the way.
That would be amazing. Oh my god. well, Mr. Snake. And then the cat's like...
The next scene is just a Sphinx.
He pets the first time you see the pet, he pets the cat and like fluffs up.
Yeah.
Oh, we get like a scene of Volgan just trying to eat breakfast with a fork and knife, and they just keep getting flung all over the room.
He has to resort to chopsticks, and he has like right next to him. You see this gigantic like canister filled with tons of them because he keeps frying them.
So much potential. He's such a powerful presence. And you take him seriously as a villain, despite him being a weird Electro Man.
Mm-hmm.
He is a ham sandwich. It is wonderful, and like it's still like that's the bad guy. He's doing bad things, and he is a threat. And it's like, it's cool. It's cool that because he is. I think what I like about him so much is that he's the most Metal Gear Solid 1 character in Metal Gear Solid 3.
No,
yeah.
it's strange.
Oh, he totally is.
He's just so fucking goofy and over the top.
You can see him in like a PS1 model with no facial expressions, just his head bobbing as he talks.
And his like little scar still, yeah.
Mr. Snake, I expect you to dine with me.
Wearing that same stupid-ass little red onesie that he wears when you wrestle him.
You get a really great boss fight with him where he's like, Ocelot, help me, and Ocelot's like, nah, I'm not doing that. You have fun.
I got a crush, man.
Literally shoots lightning out of the air with his revolver.
Which, appropriately for Volgan being the most Metal Gear Solid 1 character in this video game, that might be the most Twin Snakes moment in this video game.
Yeah, it's real good.
I'm surprised he didn't use electricity to turn into Mista with Sex Pistols, and like the bullets freeze in midair and he can aim them.
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't got. I'm sure if we ever make a Metal Gear Solid 6 that's inexplicably between Metal Gear Solid V and Metal Gear Solid 1, we'll get to it.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah, I could see that.
So that ending though is, I think, I don't know how else to word it, but like I cannot think of another video game where like you have a final boss and the anxiety and tension building up isn't from this is going to be an amazing and extremely cool fight.
Mhm.
It's I don't want this fight to end the way I know it's going to end.
I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Yeah, the last, like, 30
The last-
minutes of Metal Gear Solid 3 are just, like, some of the craziest shit. Like, some of the best, like, anything in a video game ever.
The escalation of the last act of Metal Gear Solid 3, everything after Snake gets his eye shot out,
Right.
is this escalation on a scale that I didn't know was possible.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Like, the game was already sitting pretty high, but I would not have said it was, like, groundbreaking until that last act, where
Sure.
it just skyrockets.
You didn't think it could go past 11, and it went straight to 18 out of 10.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like, everything about it, everything from escaping in the sewers to the fight with the Sorrow to everything after that, like getting your stuff back together, re-infiltrating the base, all that stuff, escalating to that point, the Volga fight, yeah, and then leading up to the motorcycle chase, and then the fight with the boss.
Shakahad.
Yeah.
And then also the eco segment, and then the fight with the boss, and then the thing after the fight with the boss.
Yeah.
Which is insane and kicks ass as well. Like, oh my god.
It's astonishing. Yeah. The fact that I didn't get it's just like extreme mood whiplash from the ending with the boss to the fight with Ocelot.
Where Ocelot flies up to your plane, leaving the area in a fucking stupid ass little Soviet hoverbike, shoots out one of your engines, crashes through the side just so that he can challenge Snake to a duel, like a proper like high noon duel, and then they go to do it, and he's like, "Nah, I didn't actually load either of the guns. That was pretty fun. See you later, dude." And he just fucking leaves. He's the funniest motherfucker alive.
You get one of
character in video
Best guy
games.
in the world.
You get one of the stupidest fist fights of all time, and like I said, I can just imagine Eva being like, "Snake, throw him out already!"
Snake's like, no, I'm in love.
Eva's like, "I'm trying to fuck you later. Get rid of your boy toy." And Snake's like, "I can't hear you over all this gay sex I'm having." He says as they do completely normal fist fights in the back of the plane.
It's just, all I could think of for most of that was that bit in Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Country Mac shows up.
And they just do like
they're
do karate noises at each other.
Yeah, they're just doing karate moves toward each other without even trying to hit each other, and just making whooshing noises. And then Frank goes,
Oh my
"Dear God, there's two of them."
Yeah, holy shit, there's two of them.
That's what it was. It was just it was Snake and Ocelot playing.
Yeah, they're on the same vibe. They're totally in the same wavelength, and it's just like they're just having a good time. Somehow this isn't mood whiplash after we just killed the coolest character in the game, because like I'm on board for it 100%. Like from moment one.
I just want to highlight the minute where Ocelot tries to do an eye poke, and he pokes the eye patch, and Snake just smiles at it.
Just grins at it like an asshole. It rules.
They're so.
Oh,
They're in love.
Snake's just like, "That trick won't work on me twice."
Hey, motherfucker.
Hey, joke's on you. I don't have any balls.
And it's great because it's like we mentioned on the stream a bit, like one of the things that's like with the Snake and Eva relationship, such as it exists in that game, is that the cutscenes where those two interact, as at least as far as my understanding is, that those are actually choreographed by the person who does the combat choreography.
Yep.
And so like you have a lot of like Eva trying to approach and be sexy or whatever, and Snake just being constantly like on edge, like he's ready to fight for his life. And then you get what is for Snake a just more completely unrestrained, unreserved thing of him having this fucking stupid ass Matrix kung fu fight in the back of his plane with his boyfriend.
it's incredible.
I love
he's
it.
Stupid.
And he's so much more comfortable with fighting Ocelot, and it's so much less awkward than like the end of this game trying to sell me on the fact that Snake and Eva like made out and fucked at the end of Metal Gear Solid 3. No, they didn't.
As we slowly learned as time went on with later Metal Gears and Death Stranding, I think Kojima doesn't understand what a heterosexual relationship is, despite being married and with kids.
No,
I don't think
I know how he describes that his wife is Rosemary. No, he does not know how heterosexual relationships are supposed to be.
But I do want to circle back to the boss.
Sure.
And that fight, because it's well worth talking about.
Absolutely.
Because this is a very funny game, and Ocelot is still the best character in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual ending of Metal Gear Solid 3 and everything that happens to Jack when all is said and done is some of the most poignant, powerful writing I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah.
And like I said it numerous times, yeah, it makes total sense why he ended up the way he did.
Yeah, it's a literal like tragic hero story, like the old fashioned kind of like a guy who like has a good heart but has a tragic character flaw that ultimately leads him astray, and that's what happens to Big Boss. You know, he can't get over. He can never get over what happened to the boss, like ever, and he can never let that go.
Look, Lisa, if you rewind and do it play by play, you can see the exact second his heart breaks.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's at that scene where he's in the Arlington National Cemetery or whatever, and he does the salute, and you get that meme of that short-haired, like, white boy crying his fucking eyes out, screaming while saluting at the screen.
Yeah, it's great!
Yeah. Man, I just had No, exploring this thought can wait for jamais vu, but I need to air it so that I make the words with my mouth so I remember that I had the thought.
Okay.
Not just that Armstrong is the anti-boss, but also at the end of that game, Raiden actually has like kind of the exact character moment that Naked Snake does at the end of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Which is to say, like, his faith or like self-perception or belief in the way things work is so shaken by that final encounter that he like in the epilogue you can see him becoming a different person who is not necessarily a better person.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, like with you can kind of like, I mean, the Big Boss is a peanut brain chimp, of course, and
right,
he immediately misunderstands the boss's will almost instantly,
as well as every other dude in
the CIA. Yeah. The thing is, I can understand why Big Boss misinterpreted the boss's will. I can get that because he's already addled by the fact that he had to do it. He had to kill her, right? And he is so wrapped, like Snake. He is so wrapped up in following orders and the mission,
the trauma of being a soldier.
Yeah. The suffering that he went through directly, being the one who has to pull the trigger on the boss. It's no wonder that he misinterpreted her will. He is traumatized by it. He is obviously not thinking clearly. No one else has that excuse. They're all doing it on purpose.
They're all doing it just because, like, the boss was so cool and her meat was so big that she basically broke the brains of a bunch of Black Ops guys for, like, the next, 50 years or whatever, which is great, right? And yeah, it's such, like, a defining moment. You could just see so many people just completely and totally misunderstanding what she was saying, which was, like, it goes back to the very beginning of this episode that we were talking about. The boss was literally just saying in her own insane way, because, like, we've been talking about it a lot lately, that speech she gives is, like, cool, but also completely insane.
Yeah. She is a lunatic. She is in a Metal Gear Solid game, so she is a lunatic.
That's correct. Like, she's extremely cool, but also she's had to do a lot of, like, insane shit and believes a lot of insane shit. But also, she came out of all of that with, like, the singular understanding that, oh yeah, like, we are all, like, we get called heroes and patriots and all that shit, but, like, we are also completely disposable by the war machine, by the war economy that eventually forms, in 4. Like, our lives don't actually mean anything, and being a hero is just like the consolation prize you get after you're dead, right?
Right.
And so, like, for her, like, and that's the thing, is that, like, kind of what ultimately Naked Snake doesn't take away and doesn't get when he becomes the big boss is that, like, she's kind of saying that, like, my becoming a villain and not being, like, recognized as a hero doesn't matter because, like, hero or villain, I'm still dead and was still, like, discarded by the government that I, like, served for my whole life, right?
Yeah.
And he can't let go of this notion that the boss is not respected in death.
Right.
When that's not the point. That's not what she was saying.
They both know what she's saying.
Mm-hmm.
He is taking a completely different implication from it than what she actually means by it.
She dies saying that the Earth is flat, and his misinterpretation is, so I have to return the round Earth to flat. I understand now.
Yeah.
It's because of, like, it's like the amount of respect and love he has for her because she is his mom, right? Like, she is Big Boss's mom in every sense of the word. And so because of that, he can't let go of this idea that, like, this person he loved and respected and who to him, like, went through all of this horrible stuff through over the course of her life and suffered so much, like, he can't let go of the fact that she's not a hero, and he wants to build a world where, like, the boss, like, all of the awful shit the boss did should get her the recognition she deserves, but the point is that, like, she did a bunch of bad stuff and it shouldn't be considered a good thing ever.
Yeah.
And that's what she's saying, and you know, he can't. He can't
because, like Snake, he can't comprehend not being a soldier.
Right.
That's all he knows in all of his existences. Whereas Zero and Paramedic and Sigint and everyone else there can comprehend that. So they're misinterpreting the boss's message. It's just them being egotistical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a weird thing where, like, because I think what is very obvious, like, the actual obvious thing that is the boss's will is that the world would be a better place if there didn't have to be soldiers.
Yeah.
Just period. However, Naked Snake rather, cannot conceive of this because he's a Green Beret in the fucking 60s. Of course he can't conceive of a world without soldiers.
Right.
Zero and Zero's cadre are just stupid, I guess. I don't really know. And then, like, everyone else who also later interprets the boss's will, who, like, I'm not going to get into them, but, like, vis-a-vis the various characters. I was going to say who those characters were, but actually I think in at least one of those cases that might be spoilers. But, like, they have obvious reasons for also having a really skewed perspective on that. But it is, like, the ultimate tragedy of Metal Gear Solid that it's, like, the very obvious ideology here is, like, it would be good if we didn't have to have a class of people whose whole job is to go kill and be killed.
Right.
And everyone else is so wrapped up in it that obvious thing is just simply not even conceivable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They're all too tied to the system to think outside of it.
Right, and that's what makes her so cool, is that she was able to, like, at the very end, kind of conceptualize, like we keep joking, if she had just read Marx, just single page of Marx, she could have made it, but no, it's fine. Everything is fine.
It's really interesting to me, actually, because I know we're probably at the point where I want to start digressing in the 4, but it is, like, really interesting to me that she is on the Cobra unit with the Fury, who is a character who I feel like is somehow an offshoot of her, because she's also someone who went to space. And she has very much the opposite emotional reaction to that the Fury did, which is that she goes to space and sees the world as it is, which is, you know, this verdant land without borders or anything, just a big old environment where people can live. And she envisions this beautiful world where people can just live. That's all she really wants. And then the Fury has that same experience and sees the world aflame as he re-enters orbit and then becomes a weird space ghost.
Right.
Sure.
And
I don't have a thought. I don't really have a coherent thought. I just think it's weird and interesting.
It's just a unique thing to point out. And I think you know, if you want to break it down, all of the Cobra unit is a reflection of the boss in one way or another.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like the reflection of her that had a really traumatic experience with bees.
I like the part of her that is just already dead.
Very old.
Yeah.
Hey, that's actually text.
You got the part of her that's already dead. The part of her that is so used to killing that has just become completely desensitized to it and the cost of war and all that. The part of her that went to space and had a religious experience. The part of her that is a horrifying monster who eats living animals and just frightens the shit out of everyone she encounters. And then the part of her that has an affinity to the bees.
Yeah, to bees.
Listen, everybody likes bees, and I have to assume the boss is cool. She also would say save the bees. You know.
Yeah, one of the core emotions, one of the core striking moments of war, bees.
Bees?
It's a little known fact, but the best Cards Against Humanity card, bees, is actually penned in the boss's honor.
Yeah. So you see, even Cards Against Humanity has misinterpreted the boss's will.
It's so true.
I think Cards Against Humanity is principally about misinterpreting the boss's will.
You know what? That would be an amazing black card. Misinterpreting the boss's will.
Yeah.
I do have a blank one. I'm going to fill it out with that from now on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Oh, God. What else before we get out of here?
Is there anything anyone wants to say about Metal Gear Solid 3?
So much, but we'd be here all night. It's really good.
The moment that we all had together where we were just waiting for Ben to pull the trigger.
Yeah, that was great. At the very end of the game.
There was a poignance to that I can't really put into words. I just really think about that moment.
It was a hard button to press.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I had an idea of, because I've seen it referenced in other things. You know, I had an idea of what that was, but I didn't know it was that exact moment. Right.
Because they don't give you a button prompt or anything that. They don't even give you words or whatever. Yeah. It is the only one I've seen that is the successful adaptation of the Kaworu bit from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Of just that freeze frame for a minute and a half in dead silence and then the cut to black.
Yeah. It's great.
And when chat or one of you point out you got to do it, I'm like, oh fuck! It's hard to push the square button in that moment.
Yeah, it's it's really just very intense to just gotta sit there for a really long time, and all of us are just kind of waiting with bated breath, and then it's you gotta pull the trigger, dude.
It's such a great directorial thing too, because he is taking advantage of the fact that your brain is still in cutscene mode.
Yeah,
you are not thinking. You have to press a button. You're like, this scene's hanging for a while, and then the realization of horror that you have to do it.
Yeah, you have to do it. He's not gonna let you kind of hide, which is incredible considering how much of Metal Gear Solid is cutscene, right? There's more cutscene than video game over the course of the entire series, right?
Yeah, but then to cut away from it while still kind of being in that mode to give you agency in the one time you don't want the agency. That should be the character's job.
It's such a smart, Saturn said, it's such a good directorial move to at that moment of taking away the kind of wall of cutscene to hide behind and just going no. It's very ballsy on Kojima's part, and I love it. Yeah. Because he knows at this point that he has made despite his best efforts, has made an extremely cool character in the boss.
Yeah.
And so now he's okay, I did it. I made you like this character. You gotta press the button, dude.
It really and it helps emphasize the point later on of how hollow Big Boss's victory is.
Yeah.
Right? And how even the name Big Boss is meaningless to him. It's such a it's such a hollow, almost cruel title to bestow upon him.
Oh yeah, it's an insult to the death of the person who he like arguably loved most more than anyone.
Yeah.
Right.
No wonder he ended up the way he did.
Sure, absolutely.
It's one of those things that, like, I love whenever it happens where it's, you can only do this in a video game.
Yeah.
You can only draw this specific twisting feeling out of the person when you make them do it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense when you get to Peace Walker and you're like, oh yeah, of course my principal enemy faction for Peace Walker is just the CIA. Of course I'm just fighting the CIA the entire time.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I be?
Like, this makes total sense. It makes me mad that MGS5 exists. Because we didn't need any of that.
We didn't need any of that, but we got it anyways.
And like, we didn't need Peace Walker, but as I'm a broken record about, Peace Walker is at least good, even if it's unnecessary. If you were gonna make MGS5, like, if that was what your vision of MGSV was, you just shouldn't have fucking done it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else that I have about 3 before we move on.
Is there anything else you need to get out of your system? We didn't talk about Ava much, which is fine.
I'll talk about Ava in a little bit.
No!
I was gonna say, unfortunately for Ava, like I mentioned, and with the fact, and like again, it is just a testament to how fantastic it is that the boss as a character works and works so well, is that Kojima does not really have any idea how to write women, or give them like any kind of believable character psychology, or like let them actually do cool things that aren't also in some way kind of degrading. And it's just, Eva makes me so, I cannot believe that we got boss in the form that we got the boss in, because Eva is right there in the same video game.
Yeah.
Sure.
I get why Debbie Mae West did not want to be credited with her name on that character.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is kind of an embarrassing character.
She is a old-fashioned Bond girl derogatory, which is a shame, because we're past the point where women should ever be written like that. But, you know.
Yeah, and like it's 2005. Like, I realize that 2005 is also like, people are still writing some people are still writing some dirt-ass dog shit in 2005. Like, that's not new. But also, like, come on, man.
Come on.
Come on, May. You wrote the boss!
You don't have the excuse that every other game developer does of being mostly just dudes who are in their 20s or 30s who have zero media literacy, just doing things they think are cool. You've watched enough movies to have an idea of what a well-written movie is. Come on.
I love Ocelot's hand gesture. I'm glad they gave him
stupid.
that.
It's so stupid, but I love it, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I like when he does that and he goes, and then all of his goons in their matching fucking Versace full body IRA outfits show up at the same time. I love his goon squad.
And then he
much.
dismisses them.
Yeah.
They're there for effect. His goon squad is so fucking funny. I love them.
It's the equivalent of Wolverine putting his claws away so he can pop them again.
And I guess that can be our point of transition to MGS4. I do like that every time we get Ocelot after 3, there's like, no, he has to have a goon squad.
Yeah.
He has to have a bunch of weird, freaky goons who are just there to make him look cool.
So, it's impossible to say if MGS4 is a good video game or not.
How'd you like that Stig Bentley video, by the way?
I hate 90% of Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah!
So I have a question, since we're covering Metal Gear Solid 4 in this episode and also the next episode.
Yes.
Is this the episode where we talk about Metal Gear Solid 4, the good video game, or Metal Gear Solid 4, the bad video game?
I think it has to be both.
I think I want to get most of the poison out, because Jamais Vu is the Raiden episode, and Raiden and Ocelot consist of all of the good moments in Metal Gear Solid 4.
I think you're broadly correct there.
Yeah.
Like, because this is the Snake episode, we will at least get to talk about the one really good thing that or I guess the two that are part of a broader thing, but like ultimately a lot of the parts of Metal Gear Solid 4 that tie back to the earlier stuff in Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 1 that focus mostly around Snake are also like just the worst parts of Metal Gear Solid 4.
You know what? I'm gonna correct my statement here. There are three good things in Metal Gear Solid 4. Mm-hmm. They are Raiden, Ocelot, and Big Boss.
Yeah.
That's it.
And the fight on Shadow Moses where you get to pilot a Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah, but Ocelot's
Yeah.
That's awesome. You know what? That's a good point. That's Ocelot adjacent. You're so right.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're
the
right.
only good parts of this game are when Ocelot is on the screen, Raiden is on the screen, or Big Boss is on the screen.
And also, Raiden is both there in the scene before that and the scene after that, which means that is Raiden territory too.
Yes,
right.
So
it's the Raiden sandwich.
There is a lot of bile I want to get out about Metal Gear Solid 4.
Keep going.
Act 3 is one of the worst things I've ever done in a video game.
Yeah, it sucks so much ass,
What an
right?
abysmal pile of garbage everything about the Big Mama scene is. Mm-hmm. What a disgrace to the name Big Mama, who is one of the best characters in Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Ben,
one of the worst characters in One Piece, though.
I know exaggeration spent the entire month of Metal Gear Solid dreading when you'd get to Act 3 of MGS4, because I'm like, if Ben bounces hard off of this, like if this makes his resolve falter, I simply don't have anything to tell him that will convince him to stay the path.
Okay, so to be clear, at that point I was too deep in. I was never going to abandon MGS4.
Sure.
I was going to see it through all the way to the end.
Sure.
Okay,
You
there was
had the sunk cost fallacy by that point.
It wasn't even sunk cost fallacy, because that implies that like I was invested for any benefit. I was deep into it because I was genuinely curious to see how it would end. But for better or worse, I was going to see MGS4 all the way through. Mm-hmm. Because even if something could be like, Sarah and I have played Detroit Beyond Become Human. Okay.
Yes.
Detroit Beyond Two Humans.
Yes.
Detroit Beyond Two Souls. Yeah, exactly.
We played Detroit Heavy Rain. Mm-hmm. Like there was nothing 4 could do that would make me angrier than that.
You didn't play Detroit Heavy Rain. I played Detroit Heavy Rain. Thank you.
You're right. I did not play Detroit Fahrenheit.
That's right. You're lucky.
You made Sarah do that? That's
Oh yeah, Sarah
That's
did that.
mean.
And then Sarah accidentally ended up buying that game because she's stupid. Don't worry about it.
It's
I'm
really
sorry.
appropriate that we're getting this for MGS4, the game that has Johnny Sasaki in it, because Ben's doing some major stealing valor right now.
No, to say that Sarah played Detroit Become Two Souls is ridiculous, because I was there telling her what to do, which is like playing that game.
It's very generous.
Sarah, saying that you played the game is like saying, well, I pressed play on the DVD remote.
I did press play on the DVD remote, and then I had to own it. But yes, no.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 3's fucking third act is so bad.
I can't think of anything that made me angrier than Eva saying, by the way, the DARPA chief was SIGINT.
Yeah.
Just to correct you, there was not 2 black characters in Metal Gear Solid. There was only 1.
Okay. The biggest problem with MGS4 is that everyone has to be someone.
Yes.
Right? There is one wholly new character in Metal Gear Solid 4, and it's Drebin.
And Sonny, but
Sonny was in MGS2.
okay, well,
she was literally a baby though. Like she's
But
not really a character.
She has a connection to a previous Metal Gear Solid game.
that makes sense.
I
Yeah,
guess
but
that's
Drebin
fair.
is the only guy who's like totally from like whole cloth a Metal Gear Solid 4 character.
And the fact, because of this weird idea that Kojima had to bring back everyone except for Nastasha for some reason, I'm not gonna say Hideo Kojima is a racist. Okay. Sure. What I am gonna say is, in his fervor for trying to connect everyone to someone, he went, "Ah, shit! I only got 2 black guys in Metal Gear Solid. I got that Sigint could be, and he can't be the bomb guy from MGS2."
Oh God, that's right. I forgot about him. That's right. Going into this, he had 3 black characters, 2 of whom were dead or presumed dead. Mm-hmm. No, 2 of them who were dead, 1 of whom we didn't know. And he's like, actually, I'm going to say that one of these is one of the dead guys, so that there are, in fact, no living black characters in Metal Gear Solid 4, except for Drebin, who's just hanging out.
Yeah. So I'm not saying he was racist. I'm saying that he wrote himself into a weird corner with his fervor of trying to connect everything to everything.
Sure.
It's one of those things where I can't say he's racist Hollywood, but I can say he was making some choices there that were, critical race theories that he's watched enough movies that he kind of wrote himself into a bad corner for.
Sure, mm-hmm. Yeah, and the problem with Metal Gear Solid 4 is a thing that gets talked about a lot, is that Metal Gear Solid 4 is a sequel to Metal Gear Solid 2, but came out after Metal Gear Solid 3. That game everybody really liked. And so, everything still has to tie to Metal Gear Solid 3. When it really should not.
It creates this weird thing where he's so interested in tying all these plot threads together that he doesn't have room to make new characters, which is why the boss squad in this is just completely fucking nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there are multiple instances, mostly centered around Naomi, where you could have done a lot more, a lot better, if you just came up with a completely new person for this debate. It didn't have to be Naomi Hunter. Vamp didn't have to be here. None of these fucking people had to be here. But he's like, well, no, they have to be here.
Yeah, we have to tie everything up. And it's like, no, you don't. Their story was over.
Yeah, so, why is Naomi here? Why couldn't you just make a new inscrutable female character?
You have to in his desire to reuse all these characters, he had to create entirely new things for Naomi and Rosemary to do.
Yeah. Rosemary is now a psychologist for some reason?
Why?
Why?
Why can't she be a new character? Why can't Naomi be a new character?
Because we had to have a plot thread that goes nowhere and achieves nothing about how Raiden got cucked but secretly didn't, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in detail next time. But it's just there's a lot of things that are just I'm going to get some cheap heat and resolve this thread from an earlier game. And it's that thread from the earlier game is not substantial enough for you to have pulled on it. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't enough material here for you to flesh this out and try to resolve it. It was already pretty much resolved.
It's one of those things where, and this is it would count as this episode if we'd played it, but is why I will bring up Peace Walker again, which is that what makes Peace Walker work is that there are Big Boss is the only returning character, and Miller is in it, but he's such a different guy, he may as well not even be the same Miller.
You can't. He's not the same Miller.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, he's technically the same Miller who appears in Metal Gear, normal Metal Gear. But also, he doesn't even have the same first name, and it is never clear where he gets the original first name. So it may as well be a different guy. But it's they're okay, we have this interquel game that's supposed to tie things up, but because we really only care about, Big Boss and how Big Boss got to where he's being, we're just gonna have this be a whole new cast of characters. And as a result, you get a bunch of cool weirdos who all get to have their own moments, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time explaining how, this is how Paramedic ties into the events of Metal Gear 1, which is not something anyone cares about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't add anything.
No.
It's just insane to me that, like, that Naomi is the way she is and Vamp is here for some godforsaken reason. And yet, like, the B&B unit is just nothing.
They're so nothing.
You couldn't have two of the B&B unit just fill those roles to make them into characters instead. Because, like, it's fun. Like we said, we were joking. The fucking Fury is a nothing character. We love him. But, like, he doesn't exactly have much personality other than being on fire and being very angry. Right?
Right.
But, like, other members of, like, Foxhound and Dead Cell and Cobra Unit are characters. You could have at least had two of the fucking B&Bs be, like, characters.
Here's the thing about the Fury. When you meet him, he tells you in very specific detail, I came back from space and saw the world aflame.
Right.
And that is more characterization that he gives in first person than literally any of the BBs.
Combined.
Yeah. Because it's combined because they all have the same backstory.
Yeah.
The only one that had any kind of personality was when Psycho Mantis possessed her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so it
right.
wasn't even her.
Yeah.
Which
That's
again, why did we need Psycho Mantis back?
Yeah, why is Psycho Mantis here in the first place?
Yeah.
It was funny.
because
That one was funny.
It was funny. It was a fun little callback.
Sure.
It is, again, I think, like, and this is like, MGS4 is the game that we're like, I'm not gonna say I'm a Kojima hater, but MGS4 is the game that is the closest to making me a Kojima hater,
That's
because it is
correct.
the one where you get the impression from the BBs, like, these were designed to be cool, sexy robot ladies, and Kojima, already not knowing how to write women and wanting to instead shoehorn more lore into this game that didn't need to be here, confronted with a bad guy squad that is completely women, and then also Ocelot, who is their boss, only writes Ocelot and then proceeds to literally not write the other characters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just completely fucking insane how little he cares.
Would have worked so much better if Vamp was one of the Beauty and the Beast squad, because then you would have a sexy vampire to round out the ranks.
That's right.
You would have a beast to go with the beauties.
Yes.
You know, like, hey,
or
thematically name convention.
Or, like, I mean, fuck that. I don't think there's any of the BB fights that are worth saving at all. Like, they're not, like, most of them aren't bad, but, like, none of them are really any good. I feel like, realistically, if you're gonna go this route and you were really fucking committed to tying up all these loose plot threads from the prior game, this should have just been the thing where you go, no, the boss squad's all the people who survived the last 3 games.
Yeah.
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 That would be
Yeah.
significantly more interesting.
Because then you can have a bad guy and then also tie up those plot threads at the same time and then not have to
Sure.
compete for resources.
Yeah,
Right.
That's an equally good idea. It's either get rid of the B&Bs entirely, or it's make the B&Bs characters and we don't have Vamp and Naomi in this game, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't have both, Kojima.
Yeah, you either have to, like, make them a completely original boss squad, completely, like, don't worry about any of the rest of the old cast except for Snake and his buddies. Just have a new bad guy squad, or you have a reprisal bad guy squad and, like, they do their own thing. You can't have the BBs and then also the bad guy squads from the prior games, because now the BBs are forced to compete for time and resources with characters that we already care about and have plot threads for, which means that they may as well not even fucking be in the video game.
Yeah. Why is Vamp here? What, he doesn't have anything, he doesn't have any personal connection to anyone in MGS4.
I like how he's just there. They don't
He's
even
just
try to
there.
invite
Like,
him
why
in.
is he here?
Here's the thing. Him and Naomi are literally only here, A, to have Vector for, like, trying to tie back the nanomachines in MGS2, which is what, like, Vamp is there for, ostensibly, and B, to tie that into Fox Die so that the ending of Metal Gear Solid 4 doesn't feel like it comes completely out of left field.
Right.
But, like, you do not need all that baggage to pull that off. You could have just done the Fox-Die thing with like a 10-minute cutscene and accomplished just as much, and then had some room to actually flush out your bad guy squad in this video game.
It would have been significantly more interesting if it was just him having like one last talk with Naomi, as like effectively like a hospice doctor, giving him the bad news of what Fox-Die is and the effects that it has, and then never showing up after that because she's like, this is probably the last time we're going to talk to each other. Do you have any last do you want? Is there anything you want to say to me?
Like
Looks at the camera.
Imagine if it's not just like, oh, she's a bad guy for some reason who's nebulously doing plots and like having a non-existent character psychology because, you know, bang the old drum, Kojima does not know how to write a woman. Imagine if it's just literally like in one of the mission briefings, she shows up on the plane and she's doing like a health checkup and she's like, yeah, man, your next scheduled visit's in 3 months. I don't think I'm going to be seeing you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you really need. And she's like, well, yeah, because the Fox-Die is mutating at a point where, like, if it doesn't kill you, you are going to yourself become a biological weapon. And I know you well enough to know that you aren't going to
let that
endanger
happen.
Hal or Sonny.
Right.
Right.
Because, you know, even if she doesn't know him that well, she knows him that well.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe you have a scene where he's kind of resentful about her for doing the Fox-Die thing, and, like, you get to have a little bit of character dialogue there, and then she leaves the fucking story because, like, it doesn't matter to her.
And then she doesn't end up sacrificing herself for nothing?
For nothing.
Why did
Why did she
die?
do that?
I also, admittedly, I still don't understand why this happens, because unlike Vamp, who gets killed by taking his nanomachine rejection dose or whatever, she has taken it multiple times before in the story and it's been fine.
She says that she has cancer and the nanomachines are suppressing her cancer. So she takes the suppressant to die.
She turns her nanomachines off.
Why?
Yeah, but like she's been doing that for the entire
But,
game. And she could have just done that like at any point if that's all she really wanted to do. She could have just kept
She had to
injecting herself.
nail Hal first for some godforsaken reason.
And then show up with Vamp on Shadow Moses for literally no reason except to stand there and touch his bare chest and kind of make like a bad girl sexy face at the camera, and then also afterwards kill herself.
Why? Why did she need to die? Why did she want to kill herself?
It's impossible to say if MGS4 is a good game.
Why did she even need to be in the video game at all?
She didn't. She didn't need to be in it. Eva didn't need to be in it. Rosemary didn't need to be in it. Campbell didn't need to be in it.
Because here's the thing. We talk about, like, oh, she could have just had one scene where she does the checkup. That didn't even have to be her, because realistically, Snake wouldn't necessarily want to hear that from the girl who gave him Fox-Die. It could just be any doctor.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea of, like, you want characters to give their farewell to Snake, right? Like, you want to send them off, so you want to bring some people back. It makes sense to bring Naomi back for one cutscene, because she talked to Snake at one point in a game, right?
Yeah.
Like, the Colonel showing up kind of makes sense because he was your mission briefing in the first game, right? Mm-hmm. You know, obviously, like, Hal and Raiden, they make sense for them to show up. Why was Eva here?
Oh,
why?
You know what it fucking should have been?
What?
Because, like, he comes up anyway in reference to fucking Raiden getting sent for his robot dialysis or
Dr.
whatever.
Madnar.
It should have just been Dr. Madnar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because he's a Metal Gear 1 character, and he is also a backdoor snatcher reference.
Yeah.
There you go.
That would have been a much cooler reference. Like, if you want to make this the finale and have characters show up, there are good ways and bad ways to do it. I think Meryl is a better representation of bringing a character back.
Yeah, I like Meryl in this game. She kind of gets saddled with, like, a lot of baggage. Like, the baggage being literally Johnny.
Yeah.
But, like, her...
Talk about the old fallen chain. It's Johnny.
It's Johnny! But no, like, Meryl herself is, like... I like what they... where her character is a logical progression, right? She's the leader of her own special forces unit.
Right.
And, like, she, at this point, has matured into, like, idolizing Snake and to instead like think of him as a friend and somebody she respects and somebody she like doesn't want to die.
They have gone from her being this wide-eyed hero worship of this legendary soldier to a colleague.
Yeah,
They are on equal terms now.
Because it's worth noting in MGS1, she is like fresh out of high school.
Yeah. She's a brand new soldier, you know, who is doing this for the glory of it.
Like, one of the things they bring up, and like, this is just me bringing back MGS1 again real briefly, and that I think is a cool detail to share, is that for, like, her being the Police Knots reference character wasn't originally the design intent. Originally, they were going to design her to look more like Matilda from The Professional, which is like a Natalie Portman role, when she was like 12.
Yeah.
And she was going to be like a fucking baby child. And so it's like, okay, yeah, she's like that in Metal Gear Solid because that character was originally conceived of as being some fucking Jejun, you know?
Literal child shoulder. Which would have been kind of whack, but also like more interesting, I guess.
It would have been really funny to get the how did you know it was me and be like, well, you're 4 feet tall and you don't fit in that uniform.
Yeah. Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
Yeah. But it does, and now she's a kind of character where thinking about ways that you could improve Metal Gear Solid 4 and going to the extreme routes of if you did Metal Gear Solid 4 completely differently, she could have been the protagonist of her own Metal Gear game.
I'm surprised that she is not a playable character at any point in the franchise.
I think it's kind of interesting how, like, MGS4 kind of, like, ends on a note where she has, in a way that we were kind of talking about frequently, about how, like Metal Gear Solids 1 through 4 is kind of, like, about the legacy of the boss to Big Boss to Solid Snake. Meryl, without either of them really acknowledging it, or maybe even like realizing it, she kind of picks up what Solid Snake was doing at the end of Metal Gear Solid 1, where she's just kind of a soldier learning her place in the world and questioning it in her own specific way. Which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, like you said, not playable in the game, much like all the other insane things Metal Gear Solid 4 does, only playable sometimes randomly in the online component.
Yeah.
I love that Metal Gear Solid 4 does that, but it is insane. I do think that's like the funniest possible way to do an online mode, but yeah.
Oh yeah, that a great game. However, designed by insane people. Yeah. There's just simply there's no conception of Metal Gear Solid 4 that exists and is medicated.
Like most of Metal Gear Solid 4, designed by crazy people. But no, I think her character is really well done. And I really, really like the scene right before the microwave hallway, where she breaks down and she's
she's really sad to see Snake go.
Yeah,
she knows this is gonna be the last time she sees him.
Yeah, and not because of any sort of romantic inclination or anything, but it's like he's a very good friend of hers, and she is heartbroken that he's about to walk to his death.
Right.
But she spent the entire game, every time she sees him, being confronted with how much increasingly more day-to-day he is that much closer to being a corpse.
Yeah.
Right.
When she first met him, it was 10 years ago, and he was the same age she is now.
Yeah.
And he looks like that.
Yeah, and he's just...
It's just a horrible thing to have to deal with.
Yeah. And, you know, every time she's in a scene with him, you know, it's emphasizing kind of one of the points of Metal Gear Solid as a franchise of like the old soldier needs to retire and step away so that the next generation can take over and actually maybe try to do some good that they were never able to.
Sure.
And it's part of the fun tension of their characters too, is that he's simply not going to let her, not because he thinks it's not correct or whatever, but because like he really wants to truly have this cycle of constant death end with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to send Meryl to do something he can do because ultimately he's going to die anyway, and that might be the difference between Meryl dying or not.
Right. Yeah. And like this is all he knows, right? Like Solid Snake kicks ass. Even in this bad video game, Solid Snake is the best part of it, other than Ocelot and Raiden, which is such a shame because like
he's a great character.
He's just surrounded by so much horse shit in this video game. But like Snake himself is like. It's the fucking him and Raiden and Ocelot are the fucking life of the party. Cause like he's still he's literally dying and he's cracking jokes and asking for a smoke.
He's asking for a light for his cigarettes while actively taking oxygen out of a breathing mask.
Exactly.
He's so fucking funny.
He does this great thing where I was reminded of, and this is gonna suck a lot that I have to say this, but I mean this in a very positive way. He reminds me a lot of how we interpreted Vincent in Dirge of Cerberus.
Sure. Oh yeah, I get what you mean.
Where we're like, so many characters are monologuing at him, and he just doesn't seem to care.
He doesn't give a fuck. Snake is the same way, where he's just like, he's totally checked out, and he's just trying to get this fucking job done, and he knows he's gonna die, and he's got like, you know, he's gonna fucking die, and he's still got so much on his plate vis-a-vis, like, you know, having a kid and everything going on with Hal, and like, I love how him and Sunny have a back and forth, and she bullies him, and he kind of like puts up with her, and it's cute.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he's just so great in this bad game, and like, his whole characterization still manages to shine even through the bad video game, right? Because all these moments where he's like riffing with Raiden, and like, you know, you are the lightning in that storm, right? Like, goddamn,
lightning in that rain.
We'll talk about it more in Jamais Vu, but like the fact that he genuinely cares so much about Raiden's well-being is so important to me.
You know, like Raiden is stuck in this horrible plot line with Rosemary and the Colonel, but like the one great kind of thing that comes out of it is the fact that Snake is willing to basically instantly jump down Campbell's throat for like hooking up with Raiden's ex, right? And it's like, yeah, he's like, you're old enough to be her father, and he like really gets on Campbell's shit for it. Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, it's because Snake is a great character.
And he's constantly worried about like Raiden getting hurt and like making like checking, like when Raiden is going in for repairs or for getting his dialysis, like, you know, he's asking like, is Raiden okay? Like, you know, making sure their homes, you know, they're safe and getting better.
And it's the same thing that's going on with Meryl, right? It's because like he has like this kind of emotional intelligence, despite being a guy who's so like obsessed with the mission and has only ever kind of known being a soldier. He still like understands that like Meryl and even Raiden, whose life has been so like thoroughly fucked by the Patriots, like they still deserve better. They still deserve to keep living. They're like the next generation, and he wants to really like make sure they make it to the end and have somebody who will take care of them and care for them. And it's awesome. Like,
it's great.
He's such a good fucking character is what I'm saying. Even in this bad video game, he still gets to have just like, he still gets to have his great moments.
Despite being a soldier, the humanity in him was never burned out like it was for the boss or Big Boss.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It is extremely important that is what separates him from his progenitors.
I think it's really important that he's so attached to, you know, Meryl and Raiden, because I think about a thing for Metal Gear Solid 1 a lot, where it's someone, I forget if it's I forget which character it is. It might be Mei Ling, it might be Naomi, but someone asks him in a codec call, like, you know, like, hey, do you have any friends? Like, something to that effect. And he goes like, well, yeah, like, there's Master Miller, and there was also Frank Yeager, and it's like, those are the two names that come to mind when Solid Snake thinks of a friend. A guy who at that point he hadn't talked to in like 6 years, and a guy that he killed.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's how fucked his whole situation is. And so it's like Metal Gear Solid 4 and like his attitudes towards Meryl and Raiden is also going, these two are also my friends.
Yeah.
And like I have the amount of friends that I personally have, I can count on one hand. So I'm going to protect them with my last dying breath. Yeah.
Especially because like he knows he's so screwed, right? Like he's like not that much older than them, but like he's so fucked. He looks so much older. And so they are his only friends, like them and Hal, right?
Right.
And so like he just wants to protect them and take care of them. And it's great. Like even in his bad video game, Solid Snake just gets to really shine. He is along with Raiden and Ocelot, like one of the best parts of the game.
Thinking about it now, I think the reason why those three work and everyone else doesn't is because they're the only three that actually feel genuine.
Yeah.
Like they're the only ones that feel like they're not putting on a brave face.
Mm-hmm.
They have emotional stakes that feel believable, and they don't really ever feel like they're just sort of reading the script the way like Meryl and Johnny sometimes do.
Yeah, like even Otacon.
Otacon is there to read the script.
Otacon just like in a lot of the scenes that he's in, feels like he's just trying to get through it. Right, like even his moments dealing with Sunny, like in the ship, like, and it's probably intentional because like. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Otacon's a very good dad.
No.
And there's also like, out of all of the characters, I think because of the person Otacon is and the way he grew up and the traumas that he had to deal with growing up, denial is like the stage of grief that he is just really comfortable just sitting in for the rest of his fucking life.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge part of it. I think it is.
He doesn't think Snake's gonna die.
If
it's really hard to pill to swallow, but I think that's how Otacon thinks throughout all of MGS4.
I think if Otacon's behavior were isolated in a game where that was better written and better scripted, it would feel a lot better. Yeah. But because he's trapped in a game where he's surrounded with people who are like Naomi, who also feel like they're just kind of arbitrarily doing things because the script needs them to do them. Mm-hmm. He comes off as worse than you could make a point about Otacon being in denial and feeling very distant and like kind of putting on a smiling face for Sunny without really believing in it. But
you could easily retell Silent Hill 2 by way of having Otacon acting increasingly more detached and insane because his husband is fucking dying.
Yeah, you could. A lot of the things in this game could work. It's just that they're all put together in one pile, and they aren't designed to mean anything.
They just aren't executed very well.
Yeah,
at all.
Like a part of MGS4 is also like the big game of like, oh, this is why I compare Kojima to Lucas a lot, because this is in a lot of ways like the Phantom Menace, where it's like, yeah, he was cooking something. But because literally no one on set was willing to tell him he was wrong like they were in the past movies that he made, Phantom Menace came out extremely fucked up.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Because like there's a lot of things like we talked about in MGS3, like we talked about in MGS1, there's a lot of things where he had an idea that he wanted to do and someone else in that development team was like, dude, no, the snake titty thing is really stupid, you can't do that. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I guess you're right. It is kind of stupid. I'll do something else.
And instead, he gives her a badass scar that, shut up, looks cool. Shut up.
Yeah, that's not what a cesarean section looks like, but also when she dies, the scar fucking slithers off of her body, and that's a sick visual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, cool. you got that because someone told him no to the first idea.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have anyone doing that in MGS4. Except for the ending of MGS4, which I guess is a good segue too, because we can talk about the other good character in MGS4, Big Boss, and how that is distinctly different from the way MGS4 was originally going to end.
Okay, so there's a lot I want to talk about, and I think Big Boss's appearance is the culmination of what separates the rest of the game, bringing back characters arbitrarily, and the epilogue of Metal Gear Solid 4. Because the rest of the game just fucking feels like the last Star Wars movie, where it's the Rise of Skywalker. It's like, yeah, everything has to be connected because look, it's that name you remember.
Right.
Clap for the name.
Get excited for product.
Yeah, but Big Boss coming back actually lands because it's just Kojima pouring out his heart in actual raw emotion It's Kojima is working through some shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of it being like, well, obviously it's got to be Eva because we got to see what happened to Eva after MGS3.
Right.
This is Kojima is talking to his dad. To his dead father.
It's very interesting because at this point, it's been brought up. Kojima's father died when he was 13. It's a thing that the Steak Bentley video brought up that everybody should go and watch. It's extremely good.
Yeah.
But it's a thing that gets brought up is that Kojima's dad died when he was 13, and it wasn't really a thing. He's talked about it in interviews before that it wasn't really a thing that kind of came to his mind too much until he got older and started having kids of his own and stuff. And I guess it's one of those things that he says he didn't think about, but obviously that's the kind of thing that stays on your mind for probably the rest of your life until you are yourself dead. When you lose your father when you're only 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always have it in the back of your mind, but you never think up. It never gets more than a background process sort of thought.
Sure.
Right. It's just part of your life. It's the same thing as you brush your teeth in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a thing with Metal Gear Solid 4 is that Hideo Kojima is 45 when that game comes out, right?
Right.
And he has kids at that point, but it's also it's not just that he's traumatized because his dad died. It's because I think at that point his kids are about the age that he was. Mm-hmm. When his dad dropped dead. Yep. And you get that just sense not just that Solid Snake is kind of Kojima's insert in this game and this is a conversation with his dad, but also it's doubled with the anxiety here of old Snake, of Kojima just wondering I could drop dead at any fucking moment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. It's not necessarily going to be I live to be 80 and die in my sleep. I could just have a fucking aneurysm tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And the anxiety of leaving his children behind, having to deal with his absence, because that's what he had to deal with as a 13-year-old too. And you really feel it come out in the action. I think about
Mm-hmm.
And you just get a really good sense of not just dealing with these thoughts and feelings of his father, but also this sense of Snake in this moment kind of really becoming his self-insert of being an older man, 45 years old. And at the, what he thought at that moment was the end of his career, or at least the end of the Metal Gear story, and kind of grappling with having this work finally done. Was it good work? It's impossible to say if Metal Gear Solid 4 is good or bad. But it is still this work that he's had to get done, and now it's okay, you are done for now. You can actually take a break, and what does that feel like? And what does that what are you thinking about when you're writing that kind of scene?
I said a lot during the stream where I'm I can tell Kojima did not want to do this.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? There's all of Act 3, the gameplay of Act 3, the gameplay of especially the gameplay of Act 1 and 2, which I forgot to bring up, but one of the cool things that I liked about Metal Gear Solid is, in a gameplay perspective, is that the stealth is so emphasized because the game's making a point it's OSP, right? It's on-site procurement, right? Mm-hmm. You are not equipped to gun down enemies at all,
right.
Never, and instead of it being a normal stealth game where it's kind of oh, you only have 5 bullets and good luck, asshole. You can fight your way out of a situation, but you cannot go picking fights.
Right.
Right? In MGS4, you're given a droid that can buy machine guns for you. And one of the first things I did in 4 was buy 700 trank darts.
Right.
And then I was good for the rest of the game.
That's right.
There was... to the point where, it felt like it didn't matter if they could... Because the gun gameplay was so much better.
Mm-hmm.
The areas were so open, and you weren't sticking around areas enough for you to learn the map and learn where to hide or anything. It was irrelevant to try to hide, to not be seen by anything.
Yeah, it doesn't come up too much in MGS4, but it is the part where, and he kind of stops doing this for Peace Walker and then does it again. That is a game that you were designed to be able to run and gun, just completely.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to mention before I lose the thought, Much like Solid Snake, Kojima is a man who is called forth by his uncaring taskmasters to do a job that he hates and thinks is immoral, which is to say making more Metal Gear Solid.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And much like Solid Snake, he ultimately was considered by his paymasters to be a disposable class.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. And then, like, you know, like you said, Metal Gear Solid 4, you can super tell that for most of it he was phoning it in because he didn't want to do it, which he literally didn't do it.
Mhm.
Didn't want to do it because, like, again, very infamously, Kojima tried to pass it off to somebody else, and then that guy got death threats, and Kojima was like, fine, fuck it, I'll do it, so, because you're all assholes.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, he phoned it in, right? And you can tell. And so at the very, very end of the game where he thinks, like, I'm finally done, he actually, you know, once he was talked out of doing the dumb bad ending,
Yeah.
he made something genuine and heartfelt.
Because it feels like what feels like for me is that he didn't want to do this, and he got through it, and he was like, I just want to be done with Metal Gear Solid. By the end of it, he realized, I'm gonna be done with Metal Gear Solid,
Whether they want me to be or not.
like after this, it is over. Like, I am done after this, and there was that bit of, even if this was not a good experience for him, I mean, I don't know for sure if it was a good experience or not. Like, you know, once he was actually convinced to do it, maybe he did have fun with it, whatever. But in the world where, like, he had this resentment for it, he still had this attachment to the project and went, oh, I am done, so I need to make this part of it count.
Sure.
And fuck Diddy!
And to a certain extent, it does literally count, because, like, for everything that Metal Gear Solid continued to lumber on and be, you know, all the way up to fucking Metal Gear Solid 5, a game that didn't need to exist, even harder than this game didn't need to exist. Like, the shit with Snake never gets undone.
No, we never see Snake again.
We never see Snake again. He actually gets to just, like, however much life he has left in him, he gets to just, like, leave and be a dad and finally get married to Hal, God willing.
We probably don't even need to bring this up in Revengeance, but it's like one of the things we're like, oh, Revengeance is the only game that comes after this, right?
Right.
And they mention Snake in one optional codec call that is missable, and it is ambiguous in that call whether Snake is even still alive or not.
Yeah.
I went and I watched that codec, and it's funny because it's between Raiden and Kevin. And Raiden refers to Snake in the present tense, and Kevin refers to him in the past tense.
Great.
I think, I'm not sure, and again, we don't need to keep harping on this, but I just want to think it. I think one of the sword replacers that you can get in that game may or may not implicitly be powered by the warrior spirit of Solid Snake.
There is a Japanese-only katana. You can get a wooden katana.
Yeah, I think they imply it is powered by Snake's ghost.
Because there is a voice that comes out of it, and it is Snake's voice actor. And the reason it's not in the American version is because they could not get David Hayter to come back and do it.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, of course they couldn't.
Because he can't talk anymore doing that voice.
Poor fucking man.
I'm sad to know they just didn't put that in the Western release at all. That sucks ass.
Yeah, no, I think it was like a promotional thing, so like they didn't have an equivalent to like pre-order bonus for it anyway.
I see.
But yeah, no, like we never see Snake again after this. After this moment, and that is good commitment on his part. I mean, unless you count Smash Bros, but whatever.
I mean, but that's first.
That takes place during MGS2. Don't worry about
That's true, yeah.
Also, for what it's worth, if you look closely at the Smash Brothers models, it is unclear whether that's actually supposed to be Solid Snake or Big Boss.
Yeah,
because he's wearing Solid Snake's outfit, but it is definitely Big Boss's face.
Yes, that's
even better.
He does have like the beard that Snake does not have.
Yeah.
This cutscene is great, not only because it's Kojima pouring his heart out and talking to his dad. It is a perfect, great encapsulation of the messages of Metal Gear Solid, and it had to exist this way.
Sure.
We needed, as convoluted as the process ended up being, we needed Big Boss and Snake to talk to each other.
Right. Yeah, like the steps to get us here were convoluted and stupid, but like this conversation kind of had to happen specifically for like this version of Metal Gear Solid 4, right?
Yeah.
The version of Metal Gear Solid 4 that we got that is, again, impossible to tell if it's good or bad. Like, it had to end kind of like on this conversation because this bad video game that I love a lot, despite the fact that we just spent a lot of time dumping on it, like, didn't earn its like iconic main character killing himself at the end.
No, not at all.
Right?
No,
Like,
that would have been a terrible way to end this.
it does not earn it even a little bit. And like, there is an alternate universe where this game is written better, or is written differently, maybe, where like Snake killing himself at the end feels bad but feels earned, right? And it's, and at that point you hard cut the credits and you go, damn. But then you walk away from it, you go, okay. And you'll spend a few weeks processing it, but you can walk away from it feeling all right with it. But if like the game we got had ended with Snake just like super reluctantly shooting himself in the mouth on screen, it would have felt awful, right?
It couldn't possibly be worse than the original draft ending.
Which
I feel the need to mention because it is important. And again, understanding why Metal Gear Solid is at its best when people tell Kojima no is because Kojima's original draft ending for this game is that, you know, like, part of why Snake and Otacon are in the Nomad all time is because literally they are on the run. Like they are wanted for questioning with regards to the stuff that happened in New York City in 2009 because, you know, they were at the center of a gigantic terrorist attack, as you do. And in the original ending of MGS4, after finally having dismantled the Patriots and ending the threat of Metal Gear forever, they turn themselves into the authorities and are executed.
Yeah.
And it's
Which
like,
sucks.
My God.
That would be...
So I don't remember who told Kojima no, but that person is a fucking hero.
When you told me about that, Saturn, all I could think of were how many bad ideas were in the original draft of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that. Please enlighten me.
So there's a bit where you go back to you parachute into Midgar, like because you need to get back in the city and it's walled off. Their original plan was you pick your party to like to parachute in, and the people you didn't pick would be killed in action.
Now, you say that's a bad idea, but have you considered that would whip ass?
It's a terrible idea for the game FF7 is.
Yeah, it would be
it's like
terrible.
Snake killing himself at the end of MGS4.
No. Again, like I understand. Like I have not ever played FF7. I have FF7 Remake. I haven't played that either. However, in a vacuum, that idea is extremely cool.
In a vacuum, that idea is good.
If this were a game where you could do that, then yeah, for sure. But it's like
Can you imagine FF7 but with the suicide mission at the end of Mass Effect 2?
Tonally and thematically, it's kind of disgusting for the game that Final Fantasy VII is. If it were a different one, like Final Fantasy Tactics, say, that would whip, actually.
Also, the other thing I want to point out is that the parachuting into Midgar thing is still a pretty far distance from the end of the game.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like
it's like an Act 2 opener.
Like it wasn't like this is like the final run of the game, and it's like, oh, it's a tragic, bittersweet ending. It's like you still would have had a significant chunk of the game to only go through with 3 party members.
I think Fantasy...
that adds a lot of context telling it's a bad idea. But if that happened at the very end of the game, though, that would be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the other... There was another method where they want to just kill everyone. Wasn't there in 7?
I think it's just that originally the ending is extremely ambiguous whether or not everyone died.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then Advent Children came out literally 10 years like Saturn. You don't know how FF7 ends, and I don't want to spoil too much. But FF7 is cartoonish. Like you play FF7 for the first time, and the way it ends, it's really ambiguous whether or not the planet is actually saved. Right?
Uh-huh.
And then it hard cuts to 500 years later.
I think more JRPGs should have the exact ending of Rogue One.
and literally And, like, everybody kind of assumed that everybody lived because, like, it'd be really weird if they didn't. But also, like, there's no hard confirmation until 10 years later and Advent Children came out. Like, that's that's the kind of thing we're dealing with here, right?
Just imagining the scene at the end of the alternate version of FF7 where the battle is won and you see in the distance the nuclear explosion that is engulfing everything. And it's just Tifa and Cloud just sitting there on the beach and they're like, well, we gotta make out in the script at some point, so it may as well be right before we get incinerated by nuclear hellfire.
Oh, don't worry, Saturn. There's a point where Cloud and Tifa fuck under the airship, so it's fine.
It's fine.
I've heard that, but I don't know if I believe you.
It's true. It's 100% canon.
That dialogue is subtext to hell.
I would have to see it myself, but it's one of those things, like, I have been betrayed before in Final Fantasy by people telling me, no, Olivia and Gaius definitely fucking a Realm Reborn, and then looking at that text and going, you are the dumbest motherfucker alive.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Another good Final Fantasy VII example, while we're still on that, is Barrett was supposed to die before Act 1 even, like, got off.
Oh, that was it! That was it, yeah!
Thank God they stopped
that was the other one.
Barrett's the best character in the game.
I think he was supposed to die in the plate crash.
No, do you remember that fake out that happens in Remake? That's when it was supposed to happen. Like, there's, like, script inside of the game for that.
Oh,
that's funny.
Oh, yeah, in Shinra Tower. Okay, yeah. Okay,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, that's
right. Oh, fuck, I remember that now. Yeah.
I realize we're diverging from Metal Gear, but I did want to say, I heard the interesting news, by the way. You know all those insane tweets with the big green text? Someone did some digging. Apparently, that is literally just in Japanese. It is obvious those green text words are supposed to be important hints about things that are going to happen in the plot of the next game. And the localizers were just not given the memo
at all. It's really funny.
Yeah, so
they fumbled that real hard. That's very funny to me.
Square Enix notoriously does not give a shit about its localizers except for Final Fantasy XIV. And Final Fantasy XIV probably shouldn't be given that kind of trust because they need to make some changes I don't like.
Yeah, the problem is Final Fantasy XIV's localization got a lot better after Koji Fox left.
That's right.
Yeah.
Damn right.
But anyway, Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid 4, that final cut, the final movie. I'm not going to call it a cutscene. That shit was an hour and a half long.
It's literally like an hour long.
2.5 hours long.
Metal Gear Solid 4 has not one, but 2 cutscenes in it that are so fucking long, both of them being 90 plus minutes apiece. They have to put a save in the middle of the cutscene, not to have a gameplay intermission, but just so that if something happens and your PS3 dies, you restart 45 minutes in instead of at the beginning.
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to like put a bookmark in it. I got it. We still got to talk about the entire thing with Outer Haven. But we're on the topic.
Yes.
We're on the topic of the scene with Snake and Big Boss. So I want to illustrate how much this demonstrates the themes of the game by saying that this final most poignant cutscene in the game that ties everything together is 3 old dying men in a cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Themes.
Like, you can't get any harder of the old generation needs to die so the new generation can actually make a better world.
Mm-hmm.
You're juxtaposing it with, as corny as it is, Meryl and Johnny's wedding.
Good. You know what? At least he's pretty. Good for Meryl.
Yeah.
Look, I know.
Just marry the. Go ahead, Oz.
I know. We say all the time, like, yes, we stand a girl who finds herself a himbo, but I don't think Johnny counts as one.
No, he doesn't. But like,
he's not a himbo.
But like,
he's just stupid.
Fine. Meryl's. Listen, I really like Meryl in this game, even despite all the shit with Johnny. So you know what? If Meryl's happy, I'm happy.
Meryl seems happy.
Meryl seems happy. That's it.
Meryl hanging up little paper ghosts in the window. They reproduced last night.
And it's like, you know what? She gets to have her big, strong arms and her pretty wedding dress, and she arm wrestles and beats all of her friends at her wedding.
And she threatens her dad with a Glock.
She threatens her dad. And by God, if she wants to marry that big, stupid idiot who I hate, and she's happy, then fine. Go live your best life, Meryl.
we were freed of the burden of MGS6 starring Johnny Sasaki.
Thank God.
That, don't worry, never a possibility, not even remotely.
Thank God.
John, when he pulled off his mask, he did have, I thought, he does have the face of a sequel protagonist.
He really does.
Here's the thing. He wasn't ever going to be a sequel protagonist because Kojima, for what it's worth, knows better. Mm-hmm. But he should have been in Revengeance. It would have been really funny.
He should have been on Raiden's Codex Squad.
Yeah,
that would have been hilarious.
No, okay. Here's my alternate proposal. Here's my alternate proposal. He's not in the Codex Squad. He's a security guard who's looking at anime porno.
The thing in making comparisons to George Lucas, I do appreciate how Johnny Sasaki is like the Jar Jar Binks of MGS4.
Yeah, correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
Nobody really likes him, but in hindsight, we all go, that could have been worse.
I mean,
it could have been the plot. It could have been the plot points that they were going to go with.
That's true.
No, I want that version of the prequel trilogy so bad, though. I'm sorry. I think Jar Jar Binks should have been secretly like a Palpatine tier bad guy.
Yeah.
That would fucking rule.
Funny.
Actually, you know what? I take it back.
Yeah, because again, like then you actually sell the "it's poetry, it rhymes" thing because Jar Jar Binks is the Yoda
of the Sith.
And it's like,
yeah,
of course he would be. Fuck, that would be such a good version of that series of movies. Anyway, Metal Gear Solid.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, I do also want to say before I lose the thought too, and we're talking about the three old men in the graveyard scene. I think it is also much like we've discussed with like Kojima's own anxieties about his career and legacy and all that. One of those dying old men who needs to die for the world to move on is Hideo Kojima's insert. In the game that he tried to pawn off on one of his younger subordinates so they could get some legs under them, and then had to take it over because his paymaster said no, it still has to be you.
Yep.
He is, and he is the only one who is allowed to actually walk away, and he is given permission from his superior, from Big Boss. Who is given permission to say, go live your last moments in peace.
Yeah.
Snake, in a way, Snake is still part. He's the bridge between the old generation and the younger generation, because he's still 40 years old?
Yeah.
In MGS4?
He's like Harry Dubois.
He is still chronologically a young man. He's just biologically old.
Biologically grampy.
Yeah, physically old. So he's this good bridge for it. So he's, Big Boss is saying, you are still technically part of the generation that my group was ostensibly trying to save. So you can go be a part of that with whatever time you have left.
Right. And
we also get the thing with Zero of like, I always love the thematic idea of revenge and like vengeance in which there's no point to it anymore.
Right.
Like, Big Boss woke up and he had this goal to put Zero down for everything that he did, against the Big Boss's will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does he find? He finds a man who is in a wheelchair and unresponsive. And it's like, what are you taking from him by killing him?
Right.
There's nothing here for you anymore.
Sure, yeah. It's just tying it. I mean, like at this point, like Zero is already dead, and at a certain point, like Big Boss is also already dead. Like he's dead man walking.
Mm-hmm.
And like at that point, it's just like, okay, well, we're gonna tie these loose ends off, and so I have to deal with Zero to like let it be me, right, at the very end, and then you get to just walk out of here and go like live your life and like maybe be normal for a few years, right?
He pulls Snake in for a hug even though he knows it's gonna kill him.
He CQCs him into a hug.
CQCs him into a hug!
I also think it is, again, like, because this is Kojima trying to be, like, finally resolve his obligations to the Metal Gear series. Having this scene where he is exonerating himself from having to continue making Metal Gear, and that same scene also be the one where, like, hey, remember this unresolved plot thread that could potentially be further sequel bait? I know it makes absolutely no difference at this point, but just to be thorough, we have to kill this old man right now.
Right here on screen. It makes no sense for Zero to be here, but we're doing it just in case.
Because I don't want Konami getting me on the phone in 3 to 5 years, like, yeah, what if you did a sequel and it's like Zero's been alive the whole time or something? Mm-hmm. I'm getting out ahead of that.
Mm-hmm. Right. And yeah, it's great. He, Big Boss CQC Snake into a hug, and like I really like that whole final conversation where they're like he's leaning on the boss's grave, and like he helps him light a cigar, and he says, "This is good, isn't it?" It's just like it's so good. It's a great last line. It's like, "This is good, isn't it?" I'm like, "You're right, Kojima. It is good. It's a good video game after all."
Is it though?
Yeah.
And then you think of Act 3 and you're like, oh, never mind.
It's really appropriate that this one we did, because Metal Gear Solid 4 is the meme of, it's so over. We're so back. It's so over. We're so back.
Yeah. It's so true. We just, the whole game is amazing, because you just spend so much time ping-ponging around, emotional responses, right?
Yeah.
Going from this sucks to this is awesome to this sucks to this is awesome.
You for me, it was Act 1 and 2 were being like, all right, I guess whatever. It's acceptable gameplay. Every Metal Gear Solid has kind of a weird start where you're trying to figure out what the game wants you to do differently than the previous one, and whatever. There's a lot of cutscenes and whatever. And then Act 3 plummets into the fucking center of the earth.
Right.
And it's some of the worst stuff I've ever seen, except for... And then it climbs up a little bit when Ocelot shows up, and he does a cool thing. And the game's like, hey, remember Ocelot? And I'm like, yes, I do like Ocelot. I would like to see more of Ocelot, please.
And then you get your wish, because you go back to Shadow Moses, and you can see a whole lot more of Ocelot. It's great.
The Shadow Moses section is also very cool. Very well done to just go back to this first area, and it's worn down, it's falling apart, and there are a lot of very bitter memories tied to it that you're flashing back to.
Sure.
And it's really well done, and then you get a very cool fight, and then you get to pilot a Metal Gear. And it's like, oh, maybe this is a good game, and maybe not, but maybe it is good.
Unrelated tangent, because it is entertaining to me, and I feel the need to derail conversation for no good goddamn reason.
As you do. This is why we have you on the show.
I don't think this came up in the Tokimeki Memorial video, because Tim Rogers was too busy talking about how Koji Igarashi worked on Tokimeki Memorial. Did you know that Hideo Kojima was the producer for not one, not two, but three Tokimeki Memorial spin-offs?
I knew that.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Good for him.
Sorry for completely derailing the thread.
No,
I just had his body of work open and my eyes just zipped.
No, that's
zoomed right in.
That's fine.
What do you mean? What do you mean that between Police Knots and Metal Gear Solid 1, he produced 2 Tokimeki Memorial spinoffs?
That's fine, because that is a good transition moment for me to talk about the actual climax of Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah,
yes.
The microwave hallway, which is one of the best, which is one of the peaks of the game.
Yeah, and famous for appearing in Tokimeki Memorial. Which
Yeah, of course.
Yes. That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
But again, one of those ones like pulling the trigger on the boss is no, you do it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites because we were going through the game together, of course, and it's I think I kind of nudged you at one point. I was like, hey, we haven't done a torture sequence yet, have we been? And you're like, you're right, we haven't done a torture sequence yet. And it's don't worry. You will.
You're going to do the hardest torture sequence ever, to the point where, my wrist started to cramp up.
Yeah.
Because it is so much longer than the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Rough.
I think I've talked about how when I used to do Goemon runs, there's a skip where you use Mini Ebisumaru to scale the mountain. Mm-hmm. And the first couple times I did it, I couldn't actually pull it off correctly because the controller I was using had a slightly elevated A button.
Sure.
So I was not actually getting the correct number of jump inputs. Mm-hmm. And how it would just destroy my wrist.
Right.
That's how I felt doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm like, it's like cramp, like actual like serious cramps. I'm like, there better not be more fucking gameplay after this because I can't use the controller.
And there is a little bit more gameplay after this, but don't worry, it also kicks ass.
Yeah.
So
it's the sick ass boss fight we can talk about more in Jamais Vu.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it was such a. It's impossible to say this game is good or bad because the microwave hallway sequence. It's so because everyone expected him to die from it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And it was going to be the thing, and I am famously against the hero dies endings.
Sure.
I don't like them in pretty much anything where it's like everyone but the hero gets to see the world afterward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a really great bit in Red versus Blue actually where they talk about that, where he talks about how like, the hero sacrifices themselves, saves the day, and everyone's happy, but the hero never gets to see that.
Right.
The hero doesn't know if their sacrifice actually saved the day. And that's kind of a bitch to think about.
Right.
So I was prepared for Snake to die in this. I'm very glad he didn't, because if you go through that pain, you deserve a reward for it.
Yeah. You should at least get to see the world in the aftermath, right?
Yeah.
Like you should still at least get to see some of the future that you helped make, even if it isn't for very long, even if you do plan to, go kill yourself in a graveyard in a couple of hours.
Right.
Like you still should be allowed to see that future. Yeah, I totally get it. And it's good. And it's really good. And it's just so brutal and difficult. Like extremely difficult. It rules. And
seeing the cut-ins of everyone else trying to make sure you succeed with that. Mm-hmm. Reminding you what you're doing this for.
Sure.
God, just imagining imagine the original ending of Fallout 3, right? But instead of it just like, oh, you got cooked to death, that's the end. You're like, well, I did it. And then the game's just like, hey, by the way, you extremely have acute demon orb radiation poisoning. You have 2 in-game weeks to wrap up anything else you wanted.
Yeah. It's good.
Radaway will not help you through this one.
Right.
I do like when at least even if you're gonna kill off the protagonist, it's not just they throw their lives away and they save the day. I do also like the thing of you won't be able to come back, because it is also it's just a classic hero's narrative thing. Part of it is if you return, you will not be able to go back home. Right.
Because you're too different afterwards.
You're too different. Yeah. And often is the case, you can't ever really return at all. And I like the idea of at least, if you're gonna have someone die anyway, at least get them to go, see, look, it's all over there. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Now, if that's satisfying to you, we can mosey on over here to the check-in desk for, Mr. St. Peter at the Pearly Gates or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, yeah, cool. Sure.
Yeah.
It's like I said during the stream, and I'm glad Snake didn't shoot himself, because I think it's more rewarding for everyone involved if Snake's ending is Otacon saying, and we never saw him again.
Right.
He saved the world, he walked off, and that we never saw him again.
Mm-hmm.
He might still be alive, but he's not coming back.
Right, yeah.
So,
much like Holger Danske, Solid Snake will return when he is needed most by the country of Denmark.
Solid Snake. And you know what? The thing is, we did see him return. Because, famously in 2017, we got a trailer that said, everyone is here.
That's right.
That's right.
They found a magical cure for his fox dye to both not only preserve his life but also de-age him back to his appropriate age, which is why he looks kind of like a combination of Big Boss and Solid Snake.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. just like people believe that the cloud in Smash Brothers is the Kingdom Hearts cloud, because in Kingdom Hearts 2, he flies off saying him and Sephiroth are probably going off to fight an epic battle.
Sure.
It's still the same Snake from MGS4. It's just they found a way to fix him.
That's funny.
That may as well be true. I'm willing to commit that to my worldview.
Yeah, I'm
sure. Why not?
I'm willing to accept that one. Sure.
You may as well just be telling me that Karen Hortensia and FGO is very specifically Karen Hortensia from Tiger Coliseum and not actually from Apollo Ataraxia.
Hey, funny story about that.
Which is true.
Oh, God. Okay, folks. We gotta get final thoughts out. It's been 3 hours.
Oh, my God. I mean...
Much like how it happens in every Metal Gear Solid game, I really have to pee. Sorry, I couldn't help.
My final thoughts are,
it was my destiny to be here in the box.
I don't... so anything... Fortunately, we have a second episode to get out anything we forgot in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one actually, like... The one thing that I forgot that I wanted to talk about was I really enjoyed. It's like it's one of those like little moments that I really enjoyed in Metal Gear Solid 4, bringing back the Beauty and the Beast and Psycho Mantis is once again you cannot make that game work anywhere but the console it came out on, to its detriment and to its and to its benefit, because the joke is so specific that you cannot help but laugh at it.
Right.
Yeah, I want to interpret Psycho Mantis returning not as him being a threat to Snake, but showing Snake a magic trick.
Yeah, no, that is it.
Like I don't know what the intent is, but like the fact that he seems almost disappointed that there's no memory card slots.
Well,
right.
again, Ben, you didn't get to see it because you played with the DualShock. If you played MGS4 with the 6-axis, because the game does track if you're using a DualShock or a 6-axis, he tries to do a trick, and he's like, there's no rumble, and he just screams and disappears.
It feels like he's showing up for the audience's benefit. To be like, hey kids, it's me. He's like a Stan Lee cameo.
He's like a Stan Lee cameo.
Like you're supposed to go, hey, there he is.
I came back from hell to move your controller around.
When he was able to move my controller, he was so happy.
He's like, I still got it, bitch.
That's because Ben, when the PS3 came out, the DualShock didn't exist yet. So that is an elated joy that he feels like six months to a year later after the game came out.
Yeah.
They had to update the game so they could improve the joke.
That's great. And then
it's so funny.
And I also know that like if you call Rosemary and Campbell's like, what do you mean you can't switch controller ports?
Yeah, it's really good.
It's like that one part in Half-Life VR for the air self-aware. They're like, you need to check your mini-map. We don't have a mini-map. Well, why not?
Yeah.
No, it feels like a joyous. It's one of the cameos that actually feels earned because it is kind of just like.
It's Kojima being Kojima.
It's more fourth wall breaking than like actually something you're meant to be taken seriously in the plot. Like it is just Psycho Mantis being like, hey, while I'm here, I'm gonna pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Right.
And it is also, like, again, like, the taste of what could have been with the BB squad since they're so undeveloped, which is the version of the game where your bad guy squad is just the reprisals of the greatest hits who either survived or psychically came back from hell to torment you more, because you can play them up as being kind of goofy, because ultimately, as is established, the bad guy squad in this game is not really important to the flow of narrative at all. So if they're just a bunch of schmucks who want to move your controller around, that's cool by me, baby.
Yeah, they all should have. They all should have been like weird, like more blatant echoes of, like the only ones we really got is. And we'll wrap this up. I know we're running out of time here, but like, Crying Wolf had Sniper Wolves show up and like carry her away, and Screaming Mantis had the Mantis thing. Laughing Octopus and Raging Raven didn't have shit.
Laughing Octopus had dying in the first act before anything cool could happen.
Yeah, it's so true.
It would have. Imagine the version of Metal Gear Solid 4 where the bad guy squad is like Psycho Mantis showing up, like, "Hey, so I met this guy called the Sorrow in Hell, and anyway, we brought back a bunch of your old worst enemies to torment you. We hate you for killing me."
That would have been funny. It would have been, and like, it would have been funny. Because Psycho Mantis' whole thing by the end of Metal Gear Solid 1 was that like he accepts his death and he is grateful to Snake.
Yeah.
It would have been funny. It would have been really charming even if the villain squad of MGS4 was Psycho Mantis coming back to tease Snake.
I like the idea of him doing that, like, "I brought back all of the villains that you have fought for vengeance. I thought we were buddies." Yes, but
while I was in hell, I watched the ending of Metal Gear Solid 3, and it turns out that if you have a duel with a guy on a plane, that it means that you love each other, even if you're trying to kill each other.
No. I came back to torch you. Why? I thought we were buddies. Yes, but Ocelot paid me. You're dead. Yes!
I thought it would be a fun bit we could do.
Do you still like Castlevania?
There's not really a lot to do in hell, so I figured I'd just raise some.
It would have been so funny because it would tie in perfectly with the idea of Ocelot doing all this for fun. Because he's such a goofball.
Because ultimately it's, and like we'll get to this next episode after we're done wrapping up, but it is just ultimately like all of this shit is mostly for show. He could have done this whole plot with a lot less playing around, but he made it really extra because it's funny.
He's a Batman villain.
He's the Joker.
He's the Joker. He's got to
Joker fight.
He's got to do a bit. He's the most important thing in Ocelot's life is 1, Big Boss, 2, the bit.
Wouldn't it be crazy if Liquid Ocelot could beatbox? I think it would sound a little something like this.
I'm the Joker, baby.
Okay, yeah, we have.
Get us out of here.
I will. We have a lot to talk about next time.
Kill me, Jack.
See, Ben, you know what you have to do. Is it loyalty to me or loyalty to the podcast?
Loyalty to Sara.
That's right. Thank you.
I'm pressing square to begin the ending bit. Thank you to Adventuria for your sort of background music. You follow me on Twitter at thegorgepodcast. You also at radioinactivity. You can also pester Oates and Saturn at their accounts.
Yeah, I'm at The Future Rules on Twitter, Tumblr, and cohost.org, and you can also bug me on the Discord, the Gorge Discord server, which
it's called the Discord.
It is the Disgorge.
Which we call the Disgorge. I'm just trying to keep it clear. You can also find me on there, and you can, curse me for the words of pain, which I say in every episode that I appear on. I would really just be thrilled to know I caused you some sort of deep psychic pain. It's all what I have going for me.
Please.
So please, get at me.
Oh, is there anywhere you want people to find you?
Don't look at me. I don't have a Twitter. I don't have a Tumblr.
Okay.
Talk to me on Discord.
Okay. Just if you want to talk to Oates, just add her on the Discord.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oates, put the gun down. Put the gun down, please.
No, not like this.
Bang, bang.
Behold, pods of the Patriots.
No, that's what you do is when you get shot by Oates, you die and you go, Saturn, die! And then you fall over, and then there's a beat, and then you go, think again!
That won't work this time!
Making the podcast go 1 minute long so I can get a kill.
Oh no. I'm being microwaved.
So much. This is the worst podcast ever made.
Fuck Act 3.
Fuck Act 3.
What an abysmal nightmare of a video game thing that they made me do. That was the worst tailing mission in anything ever.
To quote Miss Sterling, nay Jim, whose name I don't remember, is it Rebecca? Or is it Stella? It's one of those, I think.
Oh, yeah.
To quote her, fuck Konami.
Yeah.
Konami.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.